Questa la registro per YouTube perché serve. Timeline. 2009 si innamorano, 2012 si iniziano a vedere, 2014 si fidanzano, 2015 matrimonio alle Bahamas, primi problemi, Heard contrabbanda ai cani, finisce nel penale. 2016 divorzio, ordine restrittivo, 2017 conclusione del divorzio, 2018 articolo per cui è citata, 2019 parte questa causa, 2020 trial nello UK perso, 2021 controdenuncia di Amber per 100 milioni senza motivo, 2022 processo pubblico. Allora, signori, i testimoni che sono che hanno parlato per Johnny Depp sono intanto Johnny Depp, onesto nella deposizione, nessun debunk, ammette la dipendenza, preciso e professionale in quello che dice. Dottoressa Curry, la psicologa, che ha diagnosticato il disordine di bipolarità a Amber, molto professionale. Siden Braschi, la sorella, che non ha detto niente di che. Dottor Kipper cura Depp per il dito, visita Amber Heard senza riscontrare nulla. Laurel Anderson, terapista di coppia, ha visto abuso mutuale nella relazione. Depp cerca di minimizzare, mentre Amber è quella che porta sempre alla discussione. Quindi litigano spesso, ma nulla di fatto. Ben King, responsabile del Eastern Columbia Building, quello dove è successo tutto, ha visto i danni e trovato il dito di Depp. Jack Wigman, manager di Johnny Depp, che dichiara che Johnny Depp ha perso il lavoro per questo articolo. Analista di Google che conferma la correlazione articolo boom della stampa. Baruch, miglior amico di Johnny Depp nonché vicino di casa, ha letto i messaggi di Johnny Depp incazzato post divorzio. Ha detto che voleva fare del male a Amber, ma post divorzio confidenzialmente a Paul Bettany, niente di strano. Ma ha visto il filmato di Amber Heard nell'ascensore con la sorella fingere di picchiarsi. Stavano facendo prove per prendere un pugno nell'ascensore. Questo l'ha visto il vicino di casa, nonché miglior amico di Depp. Molto onesto nella deposizione. Poi Carino, ex manager di Johnny Depp, che conferma che la perdita di Pirati dei Caraibi è avvenuta senza preavviso. Sterling Jenkins, ex marine, bodyguard di Johnny, sa che Amber Heard è responsabile del cacco. Parole di Amber, scorta Amber a Coachella e la soccorre dopo un eccesso di abuso di droghe. Travis McGivern, bodyguard, ha visto Amber Heard lanciare una Red Bull, la seconda l'ha parata lui stesso e ha visto il pugno mentre portava via Johnny Depp. Quindi stiamo parlando, guarda tutti che salutano Johnny. Quindi stiamo parlando dell'incidente delle scale. Ah no, era Camilla. Incidente delle scale, attenzione, ripeto, ha visto Amber lanciare una lattina, la seconda l'ha parata personalmente e ha visto il pugno. Manager dell'isola, Johnny Depp sempre ok, Amber Heard è una stronza, nulla da riportare. Polizia 1, tutto ok. Il tizio alla front desk del building, niente, svapava. Malcolm Connolly, bodyguard, lei era manesca. Richard Marx, dealmaker di Hollywood, pezzo grosso, pezzo da 90, tosto, riconosce la correlazione accuse-danno e smonta Rottenborn. Infermiera, era sulle scale e dichiara di non essere mai stata colpita, quindi la lattina non è mai stata colpita. Ora passiamo ai testimoni di lei. Lei, mare di bugie, per quanto mi riguarda, falsifica le foto perché abbiamo visto chiaramente, adesso vi tiro fuori una clip, ma noi abbiamo visto chiaramente che lei ha falsificato le foto, quella del contrasto, della saturazione, ve la ricordate, vero? Vi ricordate la saturazione che abbiamo corretto su Photoshop? Beh, falsifica la foto, nulla di quello che dice è credibile, di conseguenza. Dopo vi faccio vedere la clip di come mente palesemente davanti all'evidenza. Per me, da quel momento in poi, tutto quello che dice non vale nulla. Dottoressa Hughes, poco professionale, di parte, testimone a pagamento, femminista, crede a Amber Heard senza aver mai conosciuto Johnny Depp. ACLU Director, il direttore dell'ACLU, che è una delle due organizzazioni a cui Amber doveva fare una donazione, soldi promessi non pagati, Elon paga i 500k, Amber Heard licenzia i suoi PR a metà processo per via della negatività che riceve online e cambia PR mid processo. Dopodiché Io Tillet, il cazzara LGBT+, arrampicatore, arrampicatrice sociale. Ho beccato un post su Twitter dove percula assieme a Rocky Bennington il dito di Depp, adesso ve lo becco. Ve lo becco, eh. Grazie mille della sub.
Bella kill minore di 3.
Non la trovo da nessuna parte. Non la trovo da nessuna parte, ma più tardi con più calma ve la trovo. C'è una foto di Io Tillet Wright e Rachel Bennington con un letto di ospedale dietro, la fasciatura al dito come Johnny Depp, che lo prendono per il culo, e Io Tillet c'ha addirittura le dita sulla... così, che lo prendono per il culo. Quindi tutto quello che dice lui non ci credo un cazzo. Squatter non attendibile. Poi ha parlato Rocky Pennington, miglior amica di Amber Heard, risposte suggerite, non attendibile. Mr. Drew, l'ex marito di lei, viveva nell'Eastern Columbia Building, ha visto i danni e le ferite, ma mai la causa. Estremamente onesto, ma hanno rimosso un dettaglio importante dalla sua intervista, che è questo qua.
Did Rocky tell you that Amber Heard was having an affair with Cara Delevingne while she was still married to Johnny Depp?
Yes.
Did she ever tell you that the three of them, Elon Musk, Cara Delevingne, spent the night with Amber in November of 2016?
To the specific date, I can't say.
Did she ever tell you in words or substance, while Amber was still married to Johnny Depp, that the three of them, Amber Heard, Elon Musk, and Cara Delevingne, spent the night together?
Yes.
So they were having a three-way affair. Delevingne spent the night together.
Yes.
Elon Musk and Cara Delevingne spent the night together.
Yes.
So they were having a three-way affair,
I
correct?
understand.
Questa intervista è sparita, non era parte della testimonianza. Strano, vero? Comunque, andiamo avanti. Sorella, Mr. Drew, questo signore qua, poi, sorella di Amber Heard, tossica, sono spesso fatta, non attendibile, mente sull'incidente delle scale, perché abbiamo due testimonianze che dicono il contrario, compresa l'infermiera che si racconta sia stata colpita. Make-up artist, professionale, onesta, ha coperto le ferite ma non ne conosce la causa. Cosa ha detto? Che Elon Musk, Cara Delevingne e Amber hanno avuto una cosa a tre e l'hanno tolto dalle testimonianze. Sarà perché coinvolgeva Elon Musk? Ottimo, Michela. Poi ha parlato Christy Sexton, insegnante, fornisce una diversa versione sul dito. Amber Heard mente. Ultima cosa, l'amica Mora viveva nell'SB, stessa testimonianza di Mr. Drew, la polizia che è andata al secondo appello, disordine ma tutto ok. Ragazzi, lei mente. Vi trovo di nuovo la clip riguardo le foto e dopodiché per me è finita.
Thank you, Your Honor.
712 redactions, you can publish.
Thank you, Your Honor. And please describe what's depicted here. Admission of... And as the other... Okay. It's turned on
or an additional light turned on in the previous one.
E il modo in cui l'ha negato davanti a Camille, per me invalida completamente tutto quello che ha detto. Vediamo se becco la clip esatta.
That's correct. That was after it had recovered.
Covering up Scott.
My arms were.
Amber was presented. They were all aboard a train.
Heard Camille Vasquez cross examination.
I knew I had to leave him. I knew.
Mo devo beccare il pezzo. Aiuto. Ah no, non è il recap. È questo? Sì, trovato. Se qualcuno mi trova la foto apprezzerei. C'è il momento in cui mente, perché quello è fondamentale. No, la foto ok. Grazie mille. Grazie mille. Aggiungiamo altro? Direi che la testimonianza di queste due buste di piscio è debunkata, no? Diciamo che la loro testimonianza la sbarriamo? Ricordo che queste qua vivevano a casa di Johnny Depp. A sue spese. Giusto per dire. Stavo cercando... Ana, se hai la clip di... Se hai la clip di lei mentre mente palesemente alle foto... Eccola qua.
Taken in the daytime because I can see the daylight behind me. Yes.
Ms. Heard, you testified yesterday. This is also a photograph of you from the same night, correct?
That is correct.
You testified yesterday.
No,
that
l'ho
the only
stampata in
difference
3D per
between these two
fare
photographs is that the light was turned on.
il prof.
That's what it appears to be. Yes.
The light is on both of these pictures, though. Isn't that right?
It looks to me like the one on the left has the vanity light, the makeup lights, you know, the more yellow-hued ones that go around the mirror.
On both of these pictures, though. Isn't that right?
It looks to me like the one on the left has the vanity light, the makeup lights, you know. Yes.
Photographs is that the light was turned on.
That's what
2016.
incorrect. I believe it was.
While you were changing the locks of your penthouse,
Dov'è?
courtroom with Mr. Ed,
No, that's incorrect. I didn't touch it.
saturation for one of these photographs.
No, I've never edited a photograph.
Didn't you just enhance the saturation?
On, and then the one on the right looks like it doesn't have those.
Isn't it true you just edited these photographs?
Non è forse vero che hai semplicemente modificato queste foto?
No, I've never
No.
edited a photograph.
No,
Didn't you
mai.
just enhance the saturation for one edited these photographs?
No, I've never edited.
Vi faccio notare che sono prova della difesa 712 e 713. Sono persino consecutive. Sono persino consecutive, chat. Per me ha finito. Che cazzo vuoi dire dopo questo? Cioè... Comunque, guardate che bella pipa che ho fatto. Anche se devo stampare di nuovo questo, perché ha avuto un problema con i layer. Però ho fatto pure l'inserto. L'ho copiata comunque, l'ho copiata palese. Ho scoperto che c'era un brand che fa sta pipa stampata in 3D carissima. Carissima. E ho detto, ma la faccio in 2 secondi. Allora, è tutta in PET col carbonio e questo inserto qua è stampato in 3D in legno. Solo che il problema è che c'è stato un disallineamento dei layer. Quello è legno vero. È tipo MDF. Tu fumi la pipa e le pipe costano? Ma l'ho fatta proprio come le pipe vere, si smonta uguale. Confermi, Dani, che l'ho fatta come una pipa vera? Una bomba, ce l'ho attaccato al fucile, Bearded. Scusate, chat, devo guardare un attimo i messaggi. Può essere utilizzato solo estetica. Se questo pezzo che ho stampato in legno lo fai effettivamente di legno, può essere utilizzata tranquillamente. No, non io che seguo da lavoro. Comunque, ragazzi, resiste al calore? No. Per quello, appunto, serve il core di legno. Game di Cup. Comunque, OCD piena, eh. Ah, scusate, non ho la telecamera accesa. Scusate. OCD piena comunque. Guardate quanti cazzo d'appunti ho preso. Lo puoi colorare? Quale? Quale, King? Il carbonio lo compri già colorato. By the way, oggi mi è arrivato un materiale che ho comprato ieri. Faccio l'unboxing con voi qua, non l'ho ancora aperto. PET arancione. Mi piace molto il colore, ci posso fare qualche pezzo resistente, qualche pezzo... L'ho comprato per fare pezzi di sicurezza. Ma se ti commissiono un paio di cose, ma anche se... Cioè, basta che mi paghi il materiale per me, cioè voglio dire, ma neanche. Ma dipende che cosa devi fare, King. Bisogna vedere se posso. Cioè, nel senso, se riesco in termini di realizzazione, non è detto dei deck box. Mi faresti vedere cosa sono? Mai usare il coltello in quel modo verso di me. Stai tranquillo. Stai tranquillo, Moican. Ho tagliato della plastica, cioè. Non ho applicato nessun tipo di forza, ragazzi, voglio dire. Vediamo un po'. Sì, tranquillamente vengono una figata, King, unico problema. 19,90, conta che te lo dovrei spedire in Sicilia. Anche facendotelo gratis, comunque spendi qualcosa. Buonasera, buonasera. Buon pomeriggio. Niente, quindi avevo pure il tempo per fare il mega riepilogo e niente. Cosa volevo stampare? Ah sì, i pezzi della pipa intanto. Vi ho ascoltati, ho scaricato Cura 5. E poi facciamo una prova di stampa con questo. No, mi avevate detto di fare... Ma ragazzi, va benissimo. Cura, Simplify, sono tutti uguali. Condividi i modelli della pipa? Dove ve li passo? Su Cura hanno messo i supporti modificabili, hanno messo un sacco di roba su Cura adesso. Anche lo spessore della linea è modificabile, è bello completo. Discord. Se mi mandi un messaggio adesso te li mando. Anzi, li metto in generale, chat. Rubateveli. Bravo, Danimarca è quella. E se facessi il preset veloce, veloce in culo? 25 minuti. No, vabbè, devo provarlo. Devo provarlo. Sto robo, il nucleo della pipa. Non serve, ma volevo farlo solo per avere due colori diversi. E per montarla anche. Arrivo, eh? Vediamo un po' sti settaggi. Ha bloccato. Cosa si progetta? L'incisione dove, King? Sul disegno? Cioè sul portamazzo? Se la puoi fare, per essere sicuro che venga molto bene, puoi farla solo nella parte superiore. Perché una pipa? Gennaro, per i meme. Non puoi coricarlo Deckbox? No, perché... Leo, grazie dei 27 mesi, grazie mille. Non puoi coricarlo perché se stampi una scatola... Immagina che devo stampare Deckbox, quindi sono due metà. Ed è la scatola così. Ok? Aperta. Se io la stampo così, ho una base d'appoggio perfetta sotto e poi deve tirare su solo le pareti. Se io lo stampo così, come cazzo fa? Cioè, lui stampa la base, va su, quando poi deve chiudere qua sopra, cosa fa? Mica può volare, deve esserci un supporto sotto e non va bene. Stessa cosa se lo stampo così. Quindi no, devi stamparlo per forza con la parte sopra, le due metà, con la parte sopra contro il contatto e la parte sotto contro il contatto. Per forza. Ma chi è che si sta facendo aspettare? Ember? È il motivo, King, per cui questo pezzo l'ho stampato così. Perché è vero che deve fare una copertura, ma è un angolo, non è un muro così. Cioè non fa così, ma fa così, quindi si riesce ad accompagnare, ma lo stampo comunque dalla parte piatta, l'ho stampato così. La pipa l'ho stampata da qua sotto. Questa l'ho stampata così. Non così. Non così. Ma l'ho stampata appoggiata da qua. Tra l'altro, puliamo. Io non fumo proprio, Gennaro, mai per i meme. Oh!
Good morning, Judy. All right, thank you. Apologize, we had a delayed juror, but now we have all the jury, so we're good to go. All right, do we have preliminary matters? All right, sure.
Figuriamoci. Comunque le proprietà di questo materiale, King, sono eccezionali, davvero. Guarda, applicando forza qua di lato, sto applicando parecchia forza, eh. Non c'è flex. Guarda che roba. È un ottimo materiale. Mai fumato, no? Davvero ottimo. A parte in un secondo momento... No, è carbonio. No, non viene in un secondo momento. La stampi proprio. Materiale della Sun... c'era il link in chat referenziato. Ve lo becco, aspettate. Tanto loro stanno chiacchierando. Vi mando esattamente il link perché tanto lo devo ricomprare che l'ho di nuovo quasi finito. Materiale che utilizzo è questo. È un pochino caro, ma neanche troppo. Costa 34 euro al chilo, ma li vale a pieno. particelle, particelle. In resina viene molto molto più preciso, ma non hai la stessa flessibilità di materiale, come ho fatto in questo caso, per avere resistenze meccaniche particolari. Cioè, con la resina stampi in resina. E quindi è bellissimo, la finitura è perfetta, ma lascia il tempo che trova in termini di proprietà meccaniche, mentre invece con la stampa a filamento puoi scegliere di farlo in nylon, puoi scegliere di farlo in carbonio, materiale flessibile, cioè, te lo potrei fare anche in TPU, il portadeck, che sarebbe il materiale delle cover dei telefoni. Sì, se piglia a botte si spacca. Fornello... Sì, ma tanto non la devo usare la pipa, ragazzi, l'ho stampata veramente solo per i meme. Hai mai stampato una pistola? Che domande sono? No. Sono ancora a piede libero, quindi direi di no. Ok. Nice try, banco di prova nazionale. Era una spia, volevi beccarmi per il calcio, Maledetto. Comunque è pazzesco quanto questo pezzo qua sappia di legno. Cioè ha proprio l'odore del legno bruciato. È illegale stampare pistole che non vanno? No, se stampi un giocattolo, no problem. Beppe sì, ho anche fatto esperimenti di essiccatura del filamento pre-stampa, ho un fornettino da toast vecchio del laboratorio di là che uso per queste cose. King, secondo me, se sei come me che progetti, ha esatto, ok. Stavo giusto dicendo quello. Se sai progettare, se sei interessato a quel mondo lì, devi averlo perché è letteralmente come... Cioè, è la digitalizzazione di quello che crei. Non può mancare in nella man cave di una persona tipo me. Ma se non sai progettare, penso che la usi 2 volte all'anno. L'ultima volta che... Io no, Umbre. Comunque è una macchina che si paga nel tempo, nel senso che sì, subito puoi dire, minchia, 200 euro sono tanti. Guarda, dopo che io ce l'ho da 5 anni, ho stampato tanta di quella roba che si è ripagata. E un esempio può essere il portacarte, nel senso che se tu ce l'hai in casa e te lo stampi, ti costa 2,50 euro al posto di 20 euro. Sono, esageriamo, 15 euro risparmiati. Se ne devi stampare 2 o 3, sono già 45 euro risparmiati. Vero, Grim? È rivoluzionario. Il fatto, beh, ragazzi, ma l'avete visto tante volte, il fatto di avere un'idea, progettarla e un'ora dopo averla nel mondo reale. Ci guadagno uguale per i progetti online. Sì, l'unica cosa è che il bello della stampante 3D è che le cose te le fai come diavolo vuoi. Consigliami come imparare. Io l'ho detto tante volte come ho imparato. Io quando ho imparato a modellare in 3D prendevo oggetti dalla mia scrivania e dicevo ok, come fatto? E provavo a modellarlo finché non veniva nel modo giusto. Ma pensa te, Alessio, cosa fai nella vita? Questo, so che sembra strano, ma questo. streaming. Questa è la Marcus dell'Ikea, sì. Yes, tutto è fatto. Non solo le ho renderizzate io, Upper Lake, ma le ho addirittura fatte in live. Dall'inizio alla fine, dal concept alla modellazione, texturizzazione, animazione, tutto in live. Ti posso aiutare un pochino, King? Per quel poco posso aiutarti. Iniziano? Ok.
Are we ready for the jury then? Okay.
Comunque mi ha saltato un layer, non so perché. Anche tu fai 3D. Ah, scusate, ho la full cam. Hai ragione, scusa, Ombre. Ben deve finire di scrivere. Blender non è il top. Queste cose le fai con Blender.
All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. All right, your next witness.
Your Honor, we'd like to call Bruce Whitkin, and it's by deposition designation.
Queste cose
Alright,
non
who's
le fai
first?
con Blender precisa.
I think we are. I think we asked
Okay.
questions first.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sorry.
That's right.
Will counsel please stipulate that in lieu of formally swearing in the witness, the
Okay.
reporter will instead ask the witness to acknowledge that their testimony will be true under the penalties of perjury, that counsel will not object to the admissibility of the transcript based on proceeding this way, and
Chi è
that the witness
questo?
is verified that he is in fact Bruce Whitkin.
Bruce Whitkin.
Yes.
E sta parlando per?
Yes, I am.
Mr. Chu?
So agreed.
And could you please state your name and business address for the record, please?
Bruce Whitkin, California, 91607.
And how did you meet Mr. Depp?
He joined a band that I was in Florida.
And did Depp ever become family?
To me, yeah.
Who was the first person that Depp married?
Musicista.
My sister-in-law, Lori Ann Allison, yes.
Okay. And was that around the time?
Right when we moved out here, 1984.
Avevo fatto un lavoro per un museo
So
dove
how long
dovevo
have you known
scansionare
Mr.
e replicare dei
How many
teschi
years?
per creare delle
Yeah,
prop
40,
didattiche.
Maybe from 82 to now.
And would you consider yourself friends with Mr. Depp?
Ma sei
We
sicuro
were
che è
till
per
about 4
lei?
years ago,
Difesa?
Okay. And before 4 years ago, were you close friends?
Yeah, I would consider him my best friend, yeah.
Was he like a brother to you before 4 years ago?
I mean, yeah, we were brothers. You would call me a brother, I'd call him a brother, yeah. We had a lot in common.
Is it fair to say that he was like family before 4 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, he was friends with my mom. My mom loved him. I mean, yeah, we were as close as you can get.
And do you agree to tell the truth today, regardless of your close past friendship with Mr. Depp?
I tell the truth either way, yes.
From about 2011 until 2016, how often do you think that you would?
È
How often do you
impressionante
estimate
quanto
that you
bene
have
stampa il
communicated with
legno.
Mr. Depp?
A lot. We were working a lot of music together. We did a film together. Well, he did the film. I just helped record some stuff. A lot of time between that era. But him and I spent a lot of time from around 2001 till...
Ex compagno di band di Johnny. Parla però per lei.
Based on your personal observations from 2011 to 2016, did Mr. Depp ever abuse illicit drugs?
Yeah, I mean, I think that abuse is the wrong word, but, you know, I think that, yeah, it was going on. You know, it wasn't like crazy rock and roll house. No, it was just, yeah. But I wouldn't call it. abuse.
What word would you use instead of abuse?
Getting high.
What? Oh,
Getting high.
okay. Getting high on cocaine?
Yeah, once in a while, if I saw it, you know. I mean, handful of times I saw it. I don't think he liked to do it in front of me.
Did you ever observe forgetfulness in Mr. Depp after he'd been drinking or using substances?
Forgetfulness, no. I think that he's got a pretty good memory, but, you know, my personal experience with him, no.
Did Mr. Depp's drugs or alcohol ever
JD
impact your
ha un'ottima
band,
memoria.
when you were bandmates or its music performances?
We were all young. No, we were kids. We all did bad stuff then.
Are you aware of Mr. Depp achieving any period of sobriety during the years that you've known him?
Yeah.
And when was that?
It's hard for me to, I mean, it was right around,
Difesa.
We'd have to look it up when he did
Solo
Lone
lui,
Ranger.
Darkness.
He seemed really kind of focused and wasn't drinking. I went to visit him, I believe it was New Mexico. Amber was there. Everything was like different. You know, he was proud of it. He wasn't drinking. And I think he was smoking a little weed, but that was it.
And do you remember about what year that was?
Feeling it's 2013, but I'd have to look to see when Lone Ranger was.
Is there a time that you believe that Mr.
Chris
Depp
Karma,
needed help
grazie
with
mille.
substance abuse?
Per ora ha parlato solo lui 5 minuti.
As a friend, yeah.
And do you know who Dr. Kipper is?
Oh, yeah.
And what do you know about Dr. Kipper in relation to Mr. Depp?
I don't have a strong opinion of Dr. Kipper, but I'll be honest as I can. He was a doctor brought on, I believe, to help him get sober. He was a sober doctor.
Vero?
And I believe he had a nurse with Johnny and a nurse with Amber at the time. I thought it was a scam. I thought it was a complete ripoff. But that's just me.
Please bring up Exhibit 3. Okay, and does this look like a true and accurate copy of this exchange?
Yeah.
And regarding the lines, I'm
Non è
real
detto
worried
che sia
about
oggi.
him and
Io ho
this
il mio
Dr.
verdetto.
Kipper. What did you mean by that?
Like I said, I didn't.
Le 9,
trust this
Jen.
guy.
And were you ever
Grazie dei
worried
22,
about Mr.
Calibro.
Depp's
Grazie
health?
mille.
Yeah, I mean, I would be, you know.
Questo comunque è
I
chillissimo.
love the guy. You know? I didn't know what he was taking, but they just both seemed like zombies.
And why were you concerned?
Just because I saw how he looked and know what he's going through, and so yeah, I was concerned, but couldn't get back in there to try and help.
Were you nervous for him in relation
Taccuino,
to
ho fatto il
drugs
riassunto
and
dell'intero
alcohol?
processo prima di
Yes.
iniziare.
So you did have some health concerns or not?
Well, yeah, I mean, like I said, we're not as young as we used to be, and you know, there was a part during that time that he was hitting it pretty hard. You could tell, and I just didn't want anything to happen to him.
And those concerns related to Mr. Depp's
Depp
health
verrà interrogato, potrebbe dover tornare alla sbarra, sì.
and Mr. Depp's, they related to Mr. Depp's drug and alcohol
Marilyn
use?
Manson.
Yes.
Back to Kipper for a moment. Do you know if when Dr. Kipper prescribed drugs, you know, would Mr. Depp also take anything else besides that? For example, would Mr. Depp drink alcohol or use other drugs in addition to prescription drugs during 2011 to 2016?
The answer would be yes. It just seemed odd to me that there was weed and wine and a sober nurse. Didn't make sense to me.
Quindi sì o no? Non ho capito.
And has Amber been nice to you since you've met her?
Amber was always very nice to me, yes.
And would you consider Mr. Depp to be a romantic person?
Yeah, I think so.
And why do you say
Lei
that?
ha accusato lui di violenza e gli ha rovinato la carriera e questo processo è per diffamazione, quindi è lui che accusa lei di
And have you
diffamazione.
noticed a certain intensity of Mr. Depp's relationships?
Yes.
And have you ever observed Mr. Depp exhibit any jealousy when he's been in a relationship?
Yes.
And do you remember when?
I go all the way back to my sister-in-law. I mean, you can definitely have a jealous streak in him.
Can you remember any specific examples?
Si è diffamata da sola finora, Ana.
You know, when he was younger, he was jealous of Nick Cage or jealous of...
Finora niente di
My
importante.
sister-in-law knew them.
And was besides that initial time period, did he ever tell you about any jealousy with any other women? Or
Era
any other
geloso.
times?
Ah!
Yeah. You know, he brought up a few with Vanessa, which were
Sì,
ridiculous. A lot of it was in his head and not in reality. You know what I mean?
And what about with Amber? Did you ever encounter any talk from JD of jealousy with respect to Amber?
Yeah, there were a couple mentions if she was doing a movie with some guy or stuff like that.
In terms of jealousy, would anything make Mr. Depp more bothered?
Ma l'ha tirata fuori dal capello,
Like
Ana.
I said,
Giorno, giorno.
if she was on a film or doing something that he couldn't be around it to...
Ma infatti, Elestar, l'ha
see
tradito
what
più
was
di 30
going on,
volte,
I
sto
think
cazzo che è
he'd work
geloso.
himself up, you know.
Beve il coccolino,
Can
giorno.
we please bring up Exhibit 6? And the very top line, if you can see that, Mr. Whitkin,
Right.
your name is in the participants column, and him.
Lei ha
Mr.
parlato
Depp is
con
in the
Dembrowski.
front column.
Right.
It's dated February 4th, 2014.
Cristina Dembrowski, che è,
Did Mr. Depp
è la sorella.
ever tell you that he had a big fight with Amber at any time?
He would mention when shit was rough, yeah. You know, if they were having issues, yeah, he would mention it.
Do you have any personal knowledge of...
Questo secondo me non vuol dire che l'ha
observing,
picchiata, questo vuol dire che
Mr.
hanno
Depp
preso una
and Mr.
botta
Manson
emotiva,
together?
secondo me.
Yeah, but you can't blame somebody's drug abuse on somebody else. But yeah, him and Manson would hit it pretty hard as well.
Per ora bene, Suaco.
And they would, if I hit it hard, they would do...
They would drink and
No, Ana.
smoke weed. I don't know if I ever saw Manson do blow, but I would assume that he did. He's done everything else.
Okay, but you would see them drink together?
Yeah. I worked with them both on a few things, so.
Let's go to Exhibit 8, please.
Yeah.
We can see that it's the same date. It's February 3rd, 2014. Text exchange between you and Amber. And do you have a...
I have a vague memory of him hanging at Manson's house for a couple of days.
Do you know what kind of
Sì,
professional
ha
help
stress
specifically?
resistance maxata lui.
I mean,
Per ora su
yeah,
Twitch la serie,
to
Kauren.
kind of clean up. I mean, he tried to clean up a couple times, and he did. I think he needed that, and he needed therapy. You know, and I recommended that to him. He did it a little bit, but then he stopped. Because from my experience, it's deep-rooted issues that he's dealing with. It has nothing to do with Amber. That's my opinion.
Okay. So you were referring to two types of professional help there. One was therapy and one was cleaning up for drugs. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Could we please bring up Exhibit 9? So this is actually a continuation of that same date exchange from February 3rd, 2014. And I'll give you a minute to read it. They're text between you and Amber.
Comunque,
Do you think that
sti
you were
rumori di
going
fondo
over
del
there,
microfono mi mandano in bestia.
out of concern?
I mean, obviously, she was concerned, so I was concerned, and you know, going to Manson's would have been interesting because I don't know if he would have left. But I was trying to get there. I know it looks like I was trying to get through the mansion or find out where they were.
Okay. Can we pull up Exhibit 10, please? Do you remember this exchange as sort of part of a continuation of the last exchange?
Yeah, probably what I was doing is reaching out to the assistants to see where the fuck he was and how he was. Because obviously I didn't get any.
Where the fuck he was.
Can I please bring up Exhibit 12? It's April 28th of 2016.
Okay.
How often were you around Mr. Depp at this time?
Ci sta l'avvocato Nato Marcio che ha una faccia, ma te credo.
Probably a bit, depending on if we were rehearsing or recording.
Ma non è vero, Grim.
And do you have any?
Probably a bit.
Do you have any memories of at this time of Mr. Depp getting high or drunk?
Sì, ma chi se ne frega,
While we were working, yeah, smoking weed. Yeah.
So I think your prior testimony was that you've not observed arguments between Mr. Depp and Amber. Is that correct, or is that wrong?
I've never seen them physically abuse each other. No.
And did you say this was at 3 a.m. when he called?
It was late. I can't exactly, but it was later than I imagined that I'd get a call. So I thought it was, something bad. So yeah, I went down.
So Stephen called at around 3 a.m, and then you went down. And your understanding, you went down after that call.
Yeah.
And what was your understanding of the reason you were called?
Yeah, that there was just crazy arguing and stuff going on down there, and for some reason he thought I could help.
What was crazy about it?
Right. I mean, I think what was crazy to me is that's the first time that ever happened. The first time Stephen ever called me for help like that. Usually it's just to come and record or go do this or go do that, but for some reason he wanted me to come.
And when Stephen called you, did he make any
La
references
dice lunga
to
anche il fatto che James
anything
Franco e
from
Elon
around?
Musk non sono... Ma ha voglia.
That I don't remember.
Sai che hanno tolto un pezzo di testimonianza dall'ex marito di Rocky che parlava di Elon?
Crazy down here, can you come?
Did he say that he wanted you to come urgently?
Yes.
How long did it take you to get there?
My house downtown at 3 a.m, maybe 20 minutes.
Did you ever talk to Amber when you went over that morning?
Not really. There was just a lot of walking around and people going in and out of the bedroom, and I don't remember if people were crying. I don't remember any of that stuff. It was just like a blur to me. I don't remember talking.
Ha un autocontrollo impressionante, Fading.
Right. Like by the time I got there, you can tell there was a vibe in the house, but.
No, secondo me quel pezzo di Elon Musk l'hanno rimosso perché non aveva nulla a che vedere con questo processo e diffamava Elon Musk. Avranno sentito gli avvocati di lui e avranno detto ma sì, togliamolo, non cambia un cazzo, perché effettivamente non cambia un cazzo. Cioè, dopo che abbiamo la testimonianza che ci sono state almeno 30, 40, 50 visite di persone a casa di lei mentre Johnny non c'era, non ci interessa sapere chi c'è dentro, cioè cazzo me ne frega di sapere chi. L'ha tradito, punto, quello è il succo.
Who is it?
Amber Heard.
This picture is ALH. In case you can't see the base number.
Compagno della band di Johnny, ex amico, sta testimoniando per lei, finora non ha detto nulla.
Mr. Whitkin, you mentioned previously that you had seen bruises on Amber's upper arm.
Yeah, one time, yes.
One time. Does this look like the bruise you saw on Amber's upper arm? Mr. Whitkin, what did the bruise that you saw on Amber look like?
I mean, it looked similar to that, but it didn't look like it looked like a grab, not a punch. Like just.
Anche lui ha visto le ferite.
Do you remember what year or time frame that bruise that you saw was?
I'd have to go through the dates. We were working on a Keith Richards documentary, and Johnny and her showed up to the studio, and I just had noticed it on her arm.
Sembrava semplicemente una presa, non un pugno, e più volte Johnny ha detto che la prendeva per tenerla ferma.
Did the bruise look like this bruise?
It's in the same vicinity.
Certo, Dani.
I don't know if that's the one.
Can you tell me more specifics about that bruise? What did it look like?
Like I said, it just looked like she was grabbed. That's all. That's what it seemed to me. Finger marks.
And did you ever talk to Amber about that bruise?
No.
And when did you see Mr. Depp with a fat lip?
Aha!
Late. I'm thinking it's sometime in
Ha visto Johnny Depp ferito.
either 2015 or 16 during rehearsal.
Could have been can you be more precise of a month? Do you think it could have been in the spring of 2015?
Yeah, I don't remember. I mean, we toured spring to summer, so yeah, maybe it's the spring of 15 or 16. I think it was 16. I think. But we did do other rehearsals for other spot gigs, so I could be off by a year.
If we could bring up Exhibit 15, please. If you look at the first text, Mr. Wicken, it's from Mr. Depp. It says, "I'm good, just got a fucked finger."
Right.
And the second text?
That's from Dudes, yeah.
And
No, secondo me i lividi al braccio gliel'ha fatti lui, ma
Just
non
the
volontariamente.
fact that somehow a finger got cut off, and he's got doctors around him that are supposed to be making him sober, and everything's supposed to be better, and it wasn't.
Did Mr. Depp ever talk to you about that? About sobering up?
A little bit. He just
Assolutamente,
said,
Metus.
AA wasn't his cup of tea. Didn't believe in a higher power.
He didn't believe sobering up was his cup of tea?
No, he just didn't believe in a higher power. If he was going to do it, he'd do it his own way.
Do you remember any specific incidents of anger with Amber?
I mean, he would talk about frustrations or whatever, and we would try and talk through it, but it wasn't as much anger as it was like confusion and sadness and why is this not working, you know. But no, he would never. Very rarely would
Gli hanno
be a
fatto uno
specific
skin draft,
reason
gli hanno
why.
preso la pelle da un'altra parte
And did
per
you notice any
chiuderglielo.
increase or decrease in Mr. Depp's anger when he was drinking or on drugs?
I didn't notice much of a difference, you know.
Did you ever see Mr. Depp doing drugs with other bandmates?
Yes,
Did you ever see Mr. Depp doing drugs with Joe Perry?
yes,
And what types of drugs did you see them do?
they were doing cocaine.
Amico dagli anni 80 ha detto che non l'ha mai visto arrabbiato sotto effetto di
How do you know they were
stupefacenti.
doing cocaine?
Because I was in the room.
And around what time was that?
It was pretty late.
What year?
It had to be 2016 because that's when we were on the road.
Have you ever seen Mr. Depp do cocaine before 2016?
Ma,
Yes.
ma perché lei porta dei
When was
testimoni
that?
che danno contro di lei? Ma
Probably
perché lei porta
2014,
testimoni che dicono cose che non le
first time I saw him
convengono?
do it, because I was quite surprised because when we were kids he hated this stuff. But then after that, when I kind of said, "Why are you doing this?" he kind of hid it from me for a long time until I believe in 2016.
And do you have any recollection of steps Mr. Depp took in December 2015 to try to assist in decreasing spending?
I don't know all the details about it. There was obviously another lawsuit with that whole thing.
Perché sotto ti va per John.
But I do know leading up to that time, he needed to slow down on spending. I heard about that.
Did Mr. Depp tell you about that?
Yeah.
What'd he say?
Time. Just something about the business manager and, you know, been spending too much and I need to slow down or do more movies or whatever.
Have you been involved in Mr. Depp's any of Mr. Depp's prior lawsuits?
Yes, I have. I was part of the first one against the management group, and then I was deposed in
Le deposizioni, prima parla l'avvocato della controparte e poi parla quello che l'ha portato nelle
Did you
deposizioni.
do you remember testifying about drug and alcohol use in that by Mr. Depp in that deposition?
Yes.
And what was that about?
Questo interrogato è onesto, ma non sta dicendo nulla di
I was
che.
at Johnny's house. Things were going good. We were hanging out, talking. And I guess Waldman came in and Johnny introduced me. And I just remember Waldman saying, "Hey, nice to meet you." And Johnny had told Waldman that I was part of Unison Music, which was named in the lawsuit. And if they needed any paperwork from me, that I had all my paperwork and tax returns. And Waldman turned right at me, looked me in the eye, and just said, "You got any shit on the Mandels?" And I said, "No." That was it. That's the last time I saw him.
And you also testified in the Bloom case, is that right?
Yeah.
Did you testify to Mr. Depp's drug and alcohol use in that testimony?
I believe I did.
How did Mr. Depp respond to your testimony?
Not happy.
Not happy. And what's your relationship with Mr. Depp now? What happened in the last 4 years?
Honestly, I don't know. Somehow I started to feel a distance. End of 2017, we had a gig, and I saw him, but he was really kind of distant and kind of fucked up.
Vabbè, dopo il divorzio.
Like he wrote me this weird text saying I stabbed him in the back and bad-mouthed him, and I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he wouldn't explain it, and pretty much I haven't seen him since 2018. We didn't get to have the old girl argument. Just cut off. Can't get through to him. No return text. No nothing. No email. My daughter even got married and he ignored it.
Poverino.
I think there's some people behind the scenes talking shit about me because everybody always tried to position themselves. Oh, who's the best friend and who's this, that. And when I was just there to be his friend.
Poverino.
I think there were some lies and bullshit said about me that he actually believed, which is surprising.
Poverino questo, mi fa
And I get to
pena.
have the conversation with him to go, "What are you talking about?" I know that he wasn't happy about my testimony, but I wasn't going to lie.
Poverino, mi sembra genuinamente triste di aver perso
Did
un
you ever
amico.
try and help Mr. Depp?
Oh yeah, I tried.
Did you ever try and help him with substance abuse?
I mean, I got him with a therapist, but never tried an intervention or nothing like that. No. Or we would just talk about it. And he would say, "Oh, you know, I'll be all right. I'll be all right."
Mi fa pena sto
And I said,
tizio.
"Well, you're not all right." And shit would just move on to the next conversation.
Did you observe anyone else trying to help Mr. Depp with substance abuse?
I mean, I know Christy, his sister, was always concerned with his well-being, whether it was substance abuse or not. And everybody, I think, deep down inside was, but like I said, the people on payroll won't really say much. They'll try, but what, you know, they don't want to lose their job. And I'm not saying they all fall into that category, you know, but you know, it's a strange thing around people like him. Everybody wants something.
And I think today you testified to seeing a bruise, but is it fair to say that you have no knowledge one way or another?
Avete sentito cosa ha detto?
People like him. It's a strange thing around people like him.
È molto strano intorno a persone come lui.
Everybody wants something.
Tutti quanti vogliono qualcosa.
And I think today you testified to seeing a bruise, but is it fair to say that you have no knowledge, one way or another, of violence?
Not personal knowledge, no.
You mentioned before that Mr. Depp has pushed you away in the last 4 years. Is that right?
Yes.
Has Mr. Depp ever admitted being violent to you?
No.
With anyone?
No.
Direi fine.
All right. Yes, ma'am. Your next witness.
Ma scusate, ma sto testimone non ha dato praticamente contro a lei.
Sorry. One more time.
Yeah, Your Honor, we'd like to call Tracy Jacobs. She's also by deposition designation, and it begins with me
All right.
asking questions.
All right. Thank you.
Ma fatemi capire, lei non ha nessuno che va lì?
Please state your name and address for the record.
Tracy Renee Jacobs, Los Angeles, California.
And what is your current occupation?
Talent agent.
Ok, agente di lei.
And how long have you been a talent agent?
34 years.
Ms. Jacobs, when did you first begin representing Mr. Depp?
When I was at another agency at ICM.
Ok,
I think it,
come si dice? Premonizione. Secondo me questa dirà che Johnny era già fottuto, la carriera era già fottuta.
You can subtract 35 years. And then when I came to UTA, I believe it was 1998, he came with me. And I've been at UTA
Ma guardate come stampa, guardate come stampa.
2 years minus
Qualità
the
super
last
rapida.
4. He was with me from the beginning.
During the time that you represented Mr. Depp as his talent agent, please describe the types of jobs and responsibilities you performed for him.
I was his agent, so my job, as all agents are, was to find, procure, and negotiate jobs for him, acting jobs for him initially.
Well, I'm assuming if you were his talent agent that you would know how his career was tracking over that 30 years you were with him, would you not?
He became the biggest star in the world.
Porca puttana!
Do you take any credit for that?
Yes.
Cioè, stanno cercando di dire che l'articolo che ha scritto lei non gli ha rovinato la carriera e questa ha appena detto?
Do you 30 years you were with him, would you not?
He became the biggest star in the world.
30 years you were with him, would you not?
Ok.
He became the biggest star in the world.
And do you take any credit for that?
Yes.
And why? What do you think your contributions were to
Okay.
Mr. Depp becoming the biggest star in the world?
Agente di
Well, A,
lui.
that he was extraordinarily talented, and B, that my talent was compatible with his in terms of understanding the kinds of roles and scripts and filmmakers that would make sense for him to work with, and being able to master the two and put them together.
What is your understanding
Si
of
beve
the reason
Coca-Colone.
why Mr. Depp terminated you?
I really don't know. All I know is he terminated essentially everyone in his life, so I was along for the ride, I guess.
Line 20 said, I'm directing your attention to line 20 of Mr. Depp's deposition on November 2020. And why did you leave Tracy Jacobs in October 2016? Go down. And Mr. Depp's
Niente, non al
answer was, Ms.
pomeriggio.
Jacobs, in the same attempt to corral the thievery and the injustice that was practiced upon me by Mr. Mandel and Mr. Bloom, at a certain point, Tracy Jacobs began to sort of become revealed as, I won't say co-conspirator necessarily, but she was part of that little group. And it seemed in my best interest to walk away from that relationship because her interests were quite different than when we started. I believe she even stated that the reason she kept me for so long was, the quote, was the money. She stated otherwise, she said, I was not an easy client to represent or something to that extent, and so yes, I had to leave the agency. Would you agree with Mr. Depp's
Anche secondo me,
characterization
Cesa.
of your representation of him?
Oh, I understand it. This is the first time I'm hearing or seeing this in 5 years. No, is the answer.
And why do you not agree?
No, non sarà funzionante per i meme,
Because it's
credi.
all untrue.
Scusate, tanto non penso di farvi perdere nulla di importante. Tanto lo
And then
sentiamo.
I asked him, after asking if he sued you, and he said no. He did sue Mr. Mandel and Jake Bloom, so I thought it was prudent to ask. Then I asked him, did Tracy Jacobs say why she did not consider you to be an easy client to represent? And he answered, she certainly never expressed any of those things to me. These are things that she was able, I guess, she came to the realization that I was not easy to represent after I fired her. But Ms. Jacobs, there was conflicts of interest all over the place. She had been represented by Joel Mandel. She was also, to some degree, represented by Jake Bloom. So therefore, there was an obvious, great, huge conflict of interest.
Ci sono dopo le 11 purtroppo, Cantabello.
Thought, no, it's not a good idea. Now, my question to you is, do you agree with Mr. Depp's characterization that you only expressed that he was a difficult
Mancano 8 giorni. I know, my man.
Absolutely not.
Lo so.
Do you
Ma è lavoro,
agree
Canta.
that you had conflicts of interest all over the place?
Esattamente, Gab.
Mr. Depp, as he states here.
No.
Do you agree that you had been represented by Joel Mandel?
Nope, never.
Was Mr. Depp a difficult client?
Non al wipe.
He wasn't initially,
Non al
and
wipe.
it became far more complicated in the last 10 years of my representing him.
And how did it become far more complicated in the last 10 years?
Non arrival. Ti scrivo, Canta.
His unprofessional behavior.
Anything else?
I think that covers a multitude of things.
And that's going to be my next question. What do you mean by Mr. Depp's unprofessional behavior in the last 10 years of your representation?
Showing up late to set consistently.
Era in ritardo sul set, ma chi se ne frega?
Virtually every movie. I would get yelled at. I never said to him, "You're a difficult client." I never used those words, but I was very honest with him and said, "You've got to stop doing this. This is hurting you." And it did. And yeah.
Did, even with your speaking to Mr. Depp about him consistently showing up late for set, did he correct that behavior during that last 10 years?
No.
And what types of difficulties did that cause for Mr. Depp?
Well, initially, Cruz loved him because he was always so
Meno 8 giorni alla verità. Minchia, il
but
giorno...
Cruz don't love sitting around
Cazzo,
for hours
canta!
and hours waiting for the star of the movie to show up. And
Cazzo!
it also got around town. I mean, people talk. It's a small community. And it made people reluctant to use him toward the end.
And when you say toward the end, was that toward the end of your representation of Mr. Depp?
Yes.
Do you recall difficulties that Mr. Depp had during Pirates 5?
Yes.
Did you have just one conversation with Sean Bailey, or did you have more than one conversation with Sean Bailey about Mr. Depp and Pirates 5?
More than one, I'm sure. I don't recall.
Okay. Do you have a recollection of the production of Pirates 5 having to suspend for several weeks while Mr. Depp had surgery on his finger?
Yes.
Did you go to Australia at any point
Magari,
during the
Gennaro.
filming of Pirates 5?
Twice.
Magari.
Yes. Was there something that caused you to determine that that was the time you should get on a plane and fly to Australia?
Yes.
What do you recall that being?
Che è realizzato, ragazzi, c'è l'Evasion il 27, ma c'è anche il verdetto.
About the lateness not showing up to talk to him about it.
When you were talking earlier about there being a change in Mr. Depp's behavior over the last 10 years of your representation and it becoming more unprofessional, was part of the unprofessional...
Ma al torneo devo giocare io, problema risolto. Sì, ma che stream viene fuori?
Yes. Was part of the unprofessional behavior
dovrei, in teoria, che
over the last 10 years of
come non sono allo stesso orario? Il processo va avanti dalle 3 alle 11.
Increasing anger and tendency towards violence?
No.
Do you know who referred Dr. Kipper to Mr. Depp?
I did.
Farò così, canta.
And why did you refer Dr. Kipper to Mr. Depp?
Gli ho già detto troppo, White.
He has had a lot of experience with high-profile people and really helping them seriously get and stay sober.
Did you observe in your dealings with Mr. Depp as his representative that he romanticized the entire drug culture?
Yes.
Onesto.
I'm asking for your observations based on your
Minchia,
dealings
Camille.
with Mr. Depp. Was it your observation that Mr. Depp had
Giuro
fundamental
che se il
issues
prossimo
with anger?
testimone è un'altra deposizione spacco tutto.
In your observation of Mr. Depp having fundamental issues with anger, did that worsen over the time of your representation, or was it relatively the same?
Esatto, canta.
Yes. It worsened over time.
Allora, questa...
Did you observe Mr. Depp lacking patience when he didn't get his needs met?
Yes, but yes.
Do you recall a time while you were representing Mr. Depp that he started having earpieces so people could feed him his lines during filming?
Yes.
Recall that became a regular thing for Mr. Depp, that he needed to use earpieces.
Nome del team object hearsay, canta.
Yes.
Nome del team questo.
Do you have a recollection of issues associated with London Fields?
Yes.
I'm going to ask you to take a look at deposition exhibit number 8. Ms. Jacobs, I'll take you to the second page first so you can just read the frame. And there's really just a part there. And then here's where I'm going to direct your attention. This is from Mr. Depp to you on Saturday, August 29, 2015. You see that?
Yes.
Okay. And Mr. Depp, when Mr. Depp would write to you in emails, would he regularly have parts of it all capitals and exclamation marks?
Yes.
Harleys, he says fucking Harley. What is he talking about?
I think he's referring to, I don't know. I think he might be referring to the daughter of a director friend of his, but I'm not sure.
So, do you have an understanding
Ma che mail si scambiano questi?
what he's talking about with the Matthew Cullen version?
Matthew Cullen was the director. I don't know about nudity, although clearly that was the case according to his understanding. And I guess he was trying to get me to kill it.
Okay. And then you responded to him, I'm already on it with lawyers and Marty Singer. Have spoken to Matthew Cohen twice this AM. He also wants it stopped. We are doing everything to shut this down. Was there another version of London?
Oh, I'm sorry. I have to correct myself. He made a typo here, which is why Harley, he means Hanley. They were the producers.
And as you sit here today, can you recall anyone at Disney committing in any way that Johnny Depp would be in Pirates 6?
No.
You testified at the beginning of this deposition that while you represented Mr. Depp, he was...
Ma se questa è stata licenziata, che cazzo stiamo parlando ancora?
Yes.
And what would you say the reputation of Johnny Depp is today?
His lawsuits don't count.
Sì, ancora meno, bravo, canta.
I mean, it's endless, but I don't know.
Esatto, Dani,
I'm
quello che ho
not out there
detto.
selling him anymore.
Have you ever seen Mr. Depp engage in angry behavior?
Yes.
Now, were you aware that Mr. Depp filed a lawsuit in the United Kingdom against the Sun newspapers and Dan Wooten, the editor, because they called him a wife beater?
Vabbè, Depp non ha
Yes.
chiamato a testimoniare persone in busta paga.
Mr. Depp hit a woman?
Judge
No.
McGee?
Have you ever
Sì, ma questa è stata licenziata prima degli eventi, quello che dico io.
No.
Have you ever seen Mr. Depp kick a woman?
No.
Va bene, canta.
Other than Amber Heard,
Ma le sta leccando l'orecchio.
any other woman who ever accused Mr. Depp of physical abuse?
No.
Have you
È vero
ever
che ha
seen
chiamato gente, però questa è stata
in
licenziata
person
prima.
any marks on Amber Heard?
No.
Ms. Jacobs,
Dove
you
canta?
testified,
Di nuovo,
please
non ho
correct
visto.
me if I'm wrong, that in the last 10 years of your representation of Mr. Depp, there was more unprofessional behavior by Mr. Depp. Is that correct?
Yes.
During that period of time, the last 10 years you represented him, was he ever fired from a movie?
No.
Have you ever seen this document
Cagabuz.
before?
I don't recall this exact document, but I know there were conversations going on.
What were you referring to when you said at the top of this document, Depp Exhibit 5, this is good news?
That we were able to help him out when he was in financial desperation.
When you say help him out, who is him?
Johnny Depp.
And what particularly was good news?
That we were able to secure a loan for him through Bank of America when Ed White couldn't get him any money. And it was very helpful to him.
What was the final deal for Murder on the Orient Express?
$5 million for 4 consecutive weeks, plus a great back end, which he has received significant money on subsequently.
What was Mr. Depp's upfront compensation for
Capisco, canta.
Yeah, he got paid $25 million with the back end.
Would it be fair to say that you cannot say one way or the other whether Mr. Depp has hit, punched, kicked, headbutted, or choked Amber Heard?
Yes.
Can you say one way or the other whether Mr. Depp has ever hit, punched, kicked, headbutted, or choked anyone else? Yes. Can you say one way or the other? Do you know?
No.
Would it be fair to say
Ma
that
che
you
domanda?
were continuing to bring in good, solid work for Mr. Depp right up to the time Mr. Depp...
Ma figurati se dice di no.
Correct, yes.
No, lavoravo di
You say
merda.
that Mr. Depp's reputation, that he became the greatest actor in the world, right?
That's not what I said, but
Okay.
I said he became the biggest movie star in the world.
Movie star, thank you, forgive me. So, as of the time that you were terminated by Mr. Depp in October 2016,
Ottobre
did
del
you still
2016.
believe that Mr. Depp was the greatest movie star in the world?
No,
Why not?
Aha!
because his star had dimmed due to it getting harder to get him jobs, given the reputation that he had acquired due to his lateness and other things.
And what were the other things?
Just, people were talking and the question was out there about his behavior.
And that behavior included,
A metà divorzio
I think
questo, eh?
I've described it several times.
would that behavior include alcohol and drug use?
Yes,
Mr. Chu asked you about City of Lies, and you indicated that you didn't believe it was released. Are you aware that Mr. Depp was accused of punching a local manager in the face during the filming of City of Lies?
In the face?
I read that. I don't know.
Do you
Oh.
have any understanding of why Mr. Depp needed that loan in January of 2016?
Ma che
Yes,
soddisfazione
he
è?
had said he had come in and met with us and he had asked for $20 million.
Did Mr. Depp tell you when he met with you why he needed $20 million?
Not specifically, other than he just needed the money.
Was there any general discussion as to why he needed $20 million in January of 2016?
Not as to why, he just expected us to do it.
So so Mr. Depp came in and said, I want you to get $20 million for me?
Actually, it was, I want you to give me $20 million. It was not discussed, the question was not asked as a loan.
Ma è palese che questa è incazzata con lui, cioè non è imparziale. Sbaglio?
What did you say in response?
I didn't. Jeremy Zimmer.
Questa non
and
sta
Jim
raccontando i
Hunt
fatti, questa è
directly
incazzata.
to that point. I was just in the meeting.
And in the meeting, do you recall what Jeremy and Jim said to Mr. Depp when he asked them for $20 million?
Ma che testimonianza è?
Yes, they said we're not in a position to give our clients that kind of money. We're not a bank.
Did Mr. Depp explain why he
Lo
thought
scrivo.
that you should just give him $20 million as opposed to loan?
Yes.
What
He felt that it had made a lot of money for us and that we should just do it because of how much money he had made
Cioè,
over the duration
praticamente
of being at UTA.
le testimonianze di Amber non è gente che sa qualcosa, ma è gente che ce l'ha con lui. Cioè, è gente, lei si è circondata di gente che le dà ragione, non di gente che ha visto le cose. Tutte le testimonianze finora è gente che le crede, non gente che ha
No.
visto.
And do you believe the Rolling Stones interview, the article, damaged Mr. Depp's reputation?
Il trans che lo percula, la migliore amica che lo percula è complice di fare le foto false, l'ex marito di lei che ha visto ma non ha mai, cioè che ha visto le conseguenze ma mai la causa, la sua sorella,
Did Mr. Depp get
la make-up artist
Invisible
che ha
Man?
visto ma non sa da dove arrivano le botte, l'ex insegnante che ha raccontato una storia diversa, l'amica Mora che è come il marito di lei,
For Universal with
il tizio che stava in band con Johnny Depp che non ha detto nulla. E adesso, ma dai, ma che è?
Pirate 6. And I just want to make sure I understand your answer. Were you involved in any kind of negotiation with Disney for any kind of option contract for Pirate 6 with Mr. Depp?
Not that I can recall. No.
Ma come fai a pensare che non volessero fare Pirati dei Caraibi 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 o 14? C'è un'altra deposition?
Again, Ms. Brithoff.
Il microfono,
Your Honor,
cazzo.
our next witness is Joel Mandel. He's also by deposition designation. And we start the questioning.
Ma non avevi abbastanza soldi per farli venire lì? Fammi capire.
Can you please state your name and business address?
It's Joel Mandel. That's Mandel. It's 8383 Wilshire Boulevard.
Now, Mr. Mandel, you are here under subpoena, is that correct? Testifying under subpoena?
Cosa vuol dire?
Correct.
Okay. Could you please
Subpoena?
describe a little bit about your educational background and work experience?
I graduated from Brown University in 1980. I graduated from the University of California Berkeley School of Law in 1983. I went to work for a law firm in Century City from 83
Non
to
ho idea che
87,
mese sarebbe.
called Wyman, Boutzer, Rothman, Kegel, and Silber. And I left in March of 87 to form this company.
January, grazie. Ma quindi chi è lui?
Could you please describe a little bit about your experience in the field of the business management, the types of clients represented, your reputation
Business
in Hollywood,
manager.
business field?
I'll cut to where we are today. You can ask me different questions. I mean, we're a full, what I would describe as a full.
Gli ha fatto l'obiezione lui, compound.
Which means that we provide a wide array of financial, administrative, advisory.
Quindi adesso la sua difesa, la difesa di Amber sta cercando di dimostrare che la carriera di Johnny era in declino, giusto? Cioè questa è la direzione che stanno prendendo.
Of cars and boats and art and planes and we help people with outside professionals on estate planning matters, and we work with brokers on house purchases and with contractors on renovations. And so it's a wide range of financial, primarily financial services, but financial and personal services that we provide to our clients.
And what types of clients are those?
The business, our business is primarily entertainment.
Per cosa? Per dimostrare che l'articolo di Amber non ha fatto danno perché il danno era già fatto. Cioè adesso non stanno più dicendo che dichiarava il falso, ma stanno dicendo che l'articolo non ha causato danno perché il danno era già fatto.
Since 1987.
When did you first meet Mr. Depp?
In, I believe, 1999.
So, if you could take us.
Sì, ma già solo il pubblico che sta tirando questa roba dimostra che lui non è un attore fallito.
Let me do my best job. I would describe things
Per adesso niente, sono tutti lei ha tutti i testimoni che le danno ragione per deposizione, ma non hanno visto un cazzo. Ho risposto a entrambi, Sparviero. Esatto, Luca, cioè stava facendo bestie fantastiche, che declino. 22 milioni di dollari per fare Grindelwald, vabbè.
His life and career exploded in size, and so as I said, our relationship started in '99. I think he did the first Pirates film in 2003, and so it had already he was on a very successful trajectory. The success of the Pirates films obviously catapulted him to an entirely different level of success. And that was a career thing. It was also
2018, nessuno.
And so there was money made.
6 giorni dopo un articolo pubblicato dal Sun. Fine mese, Jordi. Purtroppo lo stesso giorno del verdetto devo capire come fare.
His life changed, and so what did that translate? That translated into a variety of things, and I don't want to mix dates. It's a long stretch of time, but that meant a bigger life. It meant more employees. It meant buying additional real property. It meant buying additional personal property. It meant a bigger life and more expensive life.
Ok, lui spendeva.
Could you please describe for me the day-to-day logistics of communicating with Mr. Depp relating to your services?
Sure. So I'll explain this, but early on, Mr. Depp had made it clear that, just as my initial introduction to him had been through his sister, that his sister was acting in a, what I would call a gatekeeper-like role, and that she was going to play an instrumental part of his life in interfacing with people like me, like his agents, like his lawyers.
Infatti, Raito.
And so there was interface on a constant basis with
Tocca prendere le
Christie
nuove, Jordi.
in the role that he sort of placed her in. The conversations and communications were constant and daily with Mr.
Certo,
Depp.
Invicti.
They were when they needed to be. And
L'inizio
so,
di questo VOD, guardatelo qui su
we
Twitch
talked
finché è
often,
disponibile.
we met
Lo
often,
caricherò anche su
but,
YouTube, ma guardati
not
il
with
primo
the same
momento
kinds of
di...
frequency,
Ho fatto completamente il
the daily
riepilogo,
kinds
Prukashna.
of frequency that I communicated with Chris.
Primo quarto d'ora di questo VOD.
Describe the challenges presented in serving as the business manager for Mr. Depp.
Look, they changed over time. And so the challenges early on were the exciting challenges of somebody whose life and career were getting, very big very quickly. And that's a professional challenge, but it's a lovely, wonderful professional challenge. That means someone's traveling a lot. They're, again, income and expense.
Business manager di Johnny Depp che sta dicendo praticamente che lui spendeva tanto.
It exponentially grows the size of the job. But that's what I do for a living. So that's all changes and challenges, but good changes and good challenges. My
Hanno finito.
sense of the challenge of this representation and my description of the challenge would change probably sometime around 2010.
Ma assolutamente, Moshe.
And I say that because it was.
Lei ha preso 2 milioni per Aquaman, lui ne ha presi 22 per Pirati dei Caraibi.
The film Run Diaries.
Vero, Pino?
And, he had come back from that picture, and what had always been slightly difficulty in arranging meetings became more difficulty. And what I had always experienced as someone who liked to enjoy his wine at the end of the day became consumption that seemed excessive. And the ability to coordinate and find times when he would meet became more difficult. And it became clear over time that there were issues with alcohol and drugs.
Il testo della giacca di Depp, il moare sulla giacca di Depp.
More erratic behavior, more stressful behavior, more times when it was difficult to engage in the kinds of conversations I needed to do my job. And so it became more of a challenge for a variety of those reasons after 2010. And quite frankly, the other thing that
Aquaman!
13, 14,
F per Jason Momoa.
His meteoric sort of career rise had started to, there were some pictures that were not well received. And for anybody in the business, whether you're an actor, director, if you're only judged by your last picture, and there were a number of pictures in a row.
Comunque lei ogni mattina va dal
There was
parrucchiere.
a combination of events, what felt like professional pressures, what felt like some professional dissatisfactions, what I sensed was likely strains in his relationship with Amber, the use of alcohol and drugs.
Giusto, Pino.
Made my job more challenging.
You indicated that you were having more difficulty arranging meetings. What, if any, role did increased use of alcohol or drugs have on your ability to be able to arrange and engage in meetings with Mr. Depp?
There were stretches of time when it appeared clear to me that the use of alcohol and drugs was a daily event. And so there were obviously various times when I needed to communicate directly with Mr. Depp. And so some of my conversations with the people I described involved finding good days and good parts of days when he and I could engage in conversations that he and I needed to engage in, where I knew he would be clear-minded and so forth.
All right. So were there any periods that you can recall between 2010 and the end of your relationship with Mr. Depp that Mr. Depp had any periods of sobriety?
There were certainly stretches of time when he seemed better. There were days and weeks there were stretches of time when he was better, and I couldn't tell you dates, but there were stretches of time when he was better, and more often not.
As the business manager, you would have been responsible for paying Dr. Kipper's expenses. Is that correct?
Correct.
No, l'hanno detto, Crazy.
Approximately how much per year Mr. Depp spent on Dr. Kipper and his staff?
Sentiamo un po'.
I think the fee was around $100,000 a month.
Describe for me
Porca
what you
puttana.
observed of Mr. Depp engaging in what you would call erratic behavior.
What I mean are a variety of ways in which responses to things seem disproportionate to the things. And so, there were times when he would be upset about something, and he would be very, very, very upset about something, seemingly to me disproportionate to that something. Again, erratic is a funny word.
Lo stretto necessario per vivere.
I felt like things were less predictable. I felt like I was, I guess, professionally in a place where I never knew day to day what to expect.
You said that Mr. Depp was sometimes his responses seemed to be disproportionate and that he would be very, very upset. What, if any, observations did you make about Mr. Depp expressing anger?
When he was angry at someone, he would let them know.
Viva vodka, è vero.
Was that sent in my direction? Very rarely, but at times, certainly on a handful of occasions in 2015. But if he was upset at a contractor, he would vent. If he was upset with a security person, he seemed to become increasingly less filtered and increasingly the notion of I want to answer you accurately. People moderate their behavior. They may moderate their behavior in public because things are, inappropriate in a particular setting. People may be upset with an employee, but they're constrained in how the employee is chastised. My experience was that Mr. Depp became increasingly less constrained, less concerned with whether he was going to upset someone's feelings, or just increasingly comfortable venting in an aggressive way when he was upset or disappointed about something.
And did that increase over time, beginning, I think you said around 2010?
It began to change in about 2010, and it increased over time, and increased to the point where our relationship began to be impacted in 2015 and was eventually, obviously, severed in 2016.
When Mr. Depp would express his anger and upset, did he use profanity?
Sure.
Did you observe any increase in Mr. Depp's expressions of anger and upset associated with any increase in financial difficulties or having to discuss financial difficulties?
Yes. his financial circumstances in 2015 had reached a point where I was extremely concerned and was on a very, very regular basis expressing that concern. And it seemed as I increased my level of expressing that concern, there was anger directed in my direction. And so my warnings in 2015 that we were in very dire financial circumstances were not met very favorably.
So did there come a time that you observed as Mr. Depp's business manager that his spending habits became more increased, perhaps excessive, extravagant?
Yes.
And when did you observe that? When did that begin?
Again, in the time frame I've described in that 2010 and on time frame, as I recall, income was very significant, spending was very significant, and the spending levels had grown very, very, very large, and required that level of incredibly high income to be maintained. And when it dropped off, the disconnect became untenable.
And what, if anything, did you say or do to try to assist Mr. Depp in curbing that spending?
Those conversations were constant.
And were Nathan Holmes, Kevin Murphy, and Stephen Duders part of the $300,000 a month full-time staff?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know roughly how much each of them were paid?
Ma che ti frega di sapere
It's
quanto
been a
ti
long
pagano?
time. If I had to guess, Kevin Murphy was probably paid about $250,000 a year, and Stephen and Nathan probably about $125,000 a year.
Do you know how much Jerry Judge was being paid by Mr. Depp as a security guard?
We paid Jerry by the day. I think Jerry made something like $10,000 a day.
Did Mr. Depp spend any money on charities?
Some, not very much.
And approximately how much?
No specific recollection.
Less than 50,000?
I don't recall writing large charity checks. It was more his style to show up at an event or sort of lend his name to something rather than write checks.
Mr. Mandel, did
Che
Mr.
forse
Depp
valeva di
ever
più dei soldi,
acknowledge that he
direi.
needed to change
Siete
his
d'accordo?
spending patterns and improve the situation?
Forse il suo nome valeva un po' di più dei soldi?
At various times when we would have these conversations, he would acknowledge that he understood what was being communicated and would make expressions of a commitment to sort of work with me to do what was
Concessionario 2018 aveva 4.000 km quando l'ho comprata, Karen.
And say he was going to do better.
That happened on occasion, yes.
And what, if any, observations did you make about whether Mr. Depp ultimately did improve and work with you to try to get his spending under control?
La tipa del pensiero abbiamo finalmente,
It
chat.
never seemed to happen. And so there would be, at times, expressions of appreciation, expressions of an understanding, expressions of a willingness to do what was necessary. But there never seemed to be any
Big
follow-through
pipe.
when the things would be, teed up that had to
Tra
happen.
l'altro
to
ha
make
anche un bel
those,
peso.
Words real. There was no follow-up.
Now, let's talk about the tax returns for a moment. Did
Parliamo di quello.
you and TMJ file tax returns on Mr. Depp and his company's behalves while you were his business manager?
Yes.
Are you aware that Mr. Depp testified under oath that you did not file his tax returns for 17 years?
I'm aware that you're telling me.
Is it
Matiz
true
l'ho
that
messa
you
all'esterno la
did
colla.
not file his tax returns or those on behalf of his company for 17 years?
No, that's not true.
Were there times
Ma che
that
bella che è venuta,
you
oh.
were unable to pay some or all of Mr. Depp's taxes on time? What is your understanding of what or his numerous other vices?
Solo la
were?
pratica, Andre.
The use of alcohol and drugs.
Do you know how much Mr. Depp spent on prescription drugs?
Ma perché gli chiede quanto spende? Non capisco.
There were periods of time when prescription spending was, from just my experience, very high, thousands of dollars a month, but I can't tell you the time periods.
Do you have a recollection of whether TMG had to pay for property damage at other rental properties or hotel properties that Mr. Depp used because of damage to the property?
Specifics, no, but did we pay damages at various times over the years? Absolutely, yes.
And do you recall that Mr. Depp from time to time did commit property damage in the rentals that he was in or hotels? And you recall that there were times you did have to pay for damage to Mr. Depp's rentals, is that correct, or hotels?
There were times.
Okay. Now, you had testified a little bit earlier about needing $25 million by the end of the
Sembra un
year.
po' Paolo Bonolis.
Are you aware of whether Mr. Depp was able to sign on for any movies and obtain $25 million by the end of the year without the assistance of a lending entity? So the first time that you as the business manager were unable to pay Mr. Depp's taxes by October 15 was October 15, 2015. Is that correct?
Ma che bella è la pipa!
And you consider that to be an increasingly difficult and alarming situation that you were trying to resolve into late January 2016. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I showed you earlier exhibit number 8, which was the video clip of Mr. Depp slamming doors and pouring wine, etc., in the kitchen. Do you recall that video?
I recall the video, yes.
Okay. Do you have a recollection of giving Mr. Depp very bad news the morning of February 10, 2016?
I don't recall a specific meeting with a specific date. As I've indicated, there were a variety of meetings in groups and conversations alone and in groups.
Farò un adattatore per usare una sigaretta elettronica dentro una pipa finta.
How these very dire financial circumstances were going to be addressed. And as I've indicated, the tone of these conversations became more tense as time went on and these issues were not being addressed.
And is it fair to say in the first half of February of 2016, the conversations that
Le fanno già le
described
pipe.
were taking place?
Sembra essere tornato bambino che invento le cose e mio papà mi dice c'è già. Vabbè.
Mr. Depp and I began having conversations that took on a more heated turn in July of 15, when it became clear that he was not willing to sell the property in the south of France. And the tone of those conversations became more heated and more contentious as time went on because the circumstances were more dire.
And would it be fair to say that your perception was that the circumstances continued to become more dire between July 2015 up through the time of your termination in March 2016?
They did.
How did you learn of TMG's termination?
Fernandello di Mariotti, esatto, esatto Andrea.
CPA, someone in his office came to our office physically and hand-delivered a letter.
And who was the letter from?
I think they hand-delivered like one letter on the 15th and one on the 16th. So there was a letter signed by Mr. Depp indicating that our services had been terminated.
Ma che cazzo stiamo dicendo
and then there was
ancora?
a letter from Edward White's office, I recall, saying that they were the new people and we should coordinate a transition.
Did you have any familiarity with Edward White as of the time of the termination?
I had not heard of him.
La pipa del
Did
cacco.
Mr. White
Comunque,
accept your offers of assistance?
mi sento cospiratore adesso.
For the most part, no.
No. Approximately how much did Mr. Depp
Qualcosa
earn
posso
through
skippare.
malpractice, malfeasance, or embezzlement?
Testimonianza inutile, un'altra comunque.
No.
Oh, rotto cazzo.
All right, well, we go ahead and take our morning recess at this point. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's take our morning recess. Do not discuss the case and don't do any outside research, okay? Thank you.
E dopo?
Again, court is still in session, if we could. Court is still in session. Thank you. Thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and take a recess then until 11:15. Is that work? All right, thank you. Recess.
Bene, usiamo questo quarto d'ora per progettare. Comunque inutili le testimonianze di stamattina. Inutili, assolutamente. Allora, Fusion 360. Benjamin, non George. Benjamin, mettiamo un po' di musica sotto. Cosa volete ascoltare? Ditemi un po'. Andrea. Tocca fare così. Jazz? Ok. I Tool, i Tool. Ah, ma io li conosco i Tool. Come vai a prendere i funghetti? Per il processo, quarto d'ora di pausa. I draghi col 5D. Spalle al pubblico perché è epilettico. E quindi? E quindi, chat? 6, Juliet. Niente di che, next, ho fatto un riepilogo a inizio. Hit count, per tirare sulla sniper skill devi sparare a qualcosa, non importa che lo uccidi, l'importante è che fai hit count. Quindi becca uno scav, gli fai gamba, gamba, braccio, braccio, stomaco, uccidilo. Ancora no, ma poco ci manca. Cambi di luce molto veloce gli provocano crisi, ho capito. Quindi il suo stesso spettacolo gli provoca crisi, che storia. No, Mirko. Ah, della corsa? Perché non mi ha sparato. Eh sì, perché sei approssimato a 6. Juliet, sei sopra il 5,5, quindi sei approssimato a quello dopo. Nulla, Ana, ha parlato un business manager che ha sostanzialmente detto Johnny Depp spendeva tanto. Ok. Cioè, è proprio inutile. Ok. L'infamata che hanno fatto con le tasse del Flea. No, no. Raccontatemi un po'. Che infamata hanno fatto con le tasse del Flea? Infatti, definisci infamata. Dove cazzo ho messo la vite che ho appena misurato? Chat, l'ho appena misurata. Lì. Differenze tra Fusion e Inventor? Non so perché non conosco Inventor così bene. Ok. Quanto manca? 7 minuti. Riuscirò a finire entro 7 minuti? Sì, Sparviero, ma la foto l'ha caricata lei dal suo telefono. Capisci? Va bene, Scan. Va bene. In settimana. E il problema appunto è solo che sto facendo 10 ore di live al giorno. Ma... possiamo fare una cosa così. Chat, sto per farvi una domanda difficile. Intel o AMD? Scatenatevi. Computer da gaming deve giocare a Tarkov. Ok. PC, budget con ottime prestazioni. I 5, i 7 o i 9? I 5 più che sufficiente. Allora, ve lo spiego. Scanna mi ha chiesto di mandargli i link referenziati per una build. Io pensavo di proporgli un Intel i5 di ultima generazione con 16 o 32 GB di RAM, scheda madre dell'Asus, 3060 Ti o 3070. Boh, questa è la build che pensavo. 12600K, 3060 Ti o 3070. 32 se nel budget 32. Ci sta? Ok, il pubblico mi dà ragione. Ti do la lista dopo, Scanna. Chi consiglia oggi AMD è proprio in malafede. Mi spiegate che è successo? No, è tutto Asus, Gennaro. Sì, ma è anche vero che il computer lo compri una volta ogni morte di papa, Moican. Ma mi spiegate che è successo il discorso di AMD che dite di non consigliarlo? Che cosa mi sono perduto? Cioè, spiegatemi almeno che è successo, non ditemi no a priori. In realtà niente. Signora, la scena. Perché? Ho controllato quanto mancava, non è... Perché la scena? Hmm. Scan, abbiamo scatenato una conversazione che sto costruendo. Ho costruito due accessori per il calibro, che sono uno e due per misurare i proiettili. Volevo farne un unico utensile. No, sbagliato. 6 mm. Non mi piace, chat. Ah! Riprendo, no?
All right, we ready for the jury then? Okay.
Posso andare avanti facendo questo lavoro qua? Facciamo questa cosa?
All right, be seated. Your next witness.
Your Honor, our next witness is Adam Waldman, and I will start the questioning, and then Mr. Rottenborn split that with me, and we'll be questioning next, and then it will be Mr. Depp's counsel.
All right, thank you.
Basta!
Greta Hoff, and together with Ben Rottenborn, we represent Amber Laura Heard. Will you please state your name and address?
Sure, it's Adam Robert Waldman.
Ma riuscite a farne venire uno?
What is your current occupation?
Attorney. I'm also involved with a skincare company in a variety of capacities.
How long have you been an attorney?
I think since 1995.
Do you currently represent John C. Depp II, who I will be referring to in this deposition as Mr. Depp or Depp?
I do.
And is this representation an attorney-client representation?
It is.
Does it include any other type of representation of Mr. Depp other than as an attorney-client?
I would instruct the witness not to answer that question on the grounds of attorney-client privilege and attorney work product. You can't answer that question without disclosing communications between himself and his client, Mr. Depp.
Ovviamente.
As you're aware, Ms. Gretahoff, the court has ruled that Mr. Depp has not waived attorney-client privilege and will not be waiving attorney-client privilege. So you're aware of that.
So, Mr. Chu, I'm not sure that you heard my question. I was actually asking him if he had any other type of representation relationship with Mr. Depp
Ma per
other
forza.
than as an attorney.
Ma cosa vuoi che testimoni? È il suo avvocato in corso.
I think he can answer that yes or no, but I would instruct the witness on behalf of Johnny Depp not to disclose any communications you've had with
Ma
your
per
client.
forza. Ma che cazzo stiamo dicendo?
No.
So just so we're clear, since we had a little bit of record back and forth, the only way in which you represent Mr. Depp is as an attorney-client representation. Is that correct? I'm sorry, Mr. Waldman?
Ma per forza, ma... That's true.
Okay. And you are here today providing this deposition under a subpoena and then subsequent notice, correct?
Yes.
And
Scusa, ma stanno portando come testimone un avvocato in corso di lui. Che cazzo vuoi che ti dica? Non può dire nulla.
Around October 2016.
And what is your role in this case as counsel for Mr. Depp?
Objection. I would instruct the witness not to answer that question.
Ma per forza.
When did you first meet Mr. Depp as opposed to first start representing him?
Ciao Scanna. Ma stiamo
I first met
scherzando?
him in October of 2016.
How is it that you came to meet Mr. Depp?
The general counsel that I referenced a moment ago asked me to go and have a meeting with him, with Mr. Depp, and to talk about a financial problem that he was having.
Did you enter into a written representation agreement with Mr. Depp when you began your representation?
I would instruct the witness not to answer that question. That calls for attorney-client privilege.
Ma di cosa stiamo parlando?
Okay, I follow the instruction.
Have you entered into more than one representation agreement with Mr. Depp during the course of your...
Ma di cosa stiamo parlando?
Same instruction
Scusate.
not to answer. You can't answer that without disclosing attorney-client communications and attorney work product.
Mr. Waldman, when did you consider your attorney-client relationship
Ma
with
con
Mr.
che
Depp
faccia
to have
porti una prova del genere?
I believe it began
Ciao, Anna.
the night I met him, actually.
Ma stiamo scherzando, vero?
sometime in October 2016?
Yes, ma'am.
Has the attorney-client relationship between you and Mr. Depp been severed at any point between October 2016 and the present?
Would instruct the witness not to answer that question.
Ma per forza!
On the grounds that you can't answer that question without disclosing attorney-client communications.
Ma per forza, ma di cosa stiamo parlando?
Okay, I accept the instruction.
As Mr. Depp's attorney, you have provided him with advice. Is that fair to say?
That's correct.
And you have charged Mr. Depp for your
Sono
advice,
esterrefatto,
correct?
cioè.
I would instruct the witness not to answer that question. You can't answer that without disclosing attorney-client communications, and the fee arrangement in any event is irrelevant. But I'm instructing him not to answer on the grounds of privilege.
I accept the instruction.
Mr. Waldman, when you provide legal services in an attorney-client relationship, your understanding of that is that you provide advice and your client in turn compensates you in some manner. Would that be fair to say?
Yes, as a general matter, that's how I understand an attorney-client relationship, yes.
And has Mr. Depp paid you for advice?
I do instruct the witness not to answer on the grounds of attorney-client privilege. You can't answer that question without disclosing your communications with Mr. Depp.
I accept the instruction.
Well, let's go general again and see if maybe we can...
L'ha chiamato la difesa di Amber, raga.
In your relationship with your clients, you provide advice, and it's up to the client to determine whether to follow that advice. Would that be fair to say?
As a general matter, I do agree with that statement, yes.
Non può dire nulla.
And by the same token, it would be up to the client to determine whether to reject your advice in whole or part, correct?
You're still speaking in general.
Correct.
In general, yes.
Okay. Now, did your relationship with Mr. Depp, and I'm talking about your attorney-client relationship, deviate from those general principles that in some way Mr. Depp is not permitted to follow or reject your
Ma
advice?
sono senza parole.
Instruct the witness not to answer the question.
Ma per forza non può rispondere, è il suo avvocato in corso d'opera.
I accept the instruction.
Grazie al
Now,
cazzo,
Mr.
I
Depp
accept
has
the
the right to
instruction.
terminate your representation at any time. Is that correct?
But yes, I think it's true.
I think
Depp
we need to let.
would be free to terminate at any time.
My apologies, Mr. Waldman. I didn't realize you were still talking. Did you finish?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Now, has Mr. Depp terminated your representation of him at any time between October 2016 and the present?
That's the same question that I instructed Mr. Waldman not to answer before, just stated in a slightly different way, so I would instruct the witness not to answer that
Ride
question.
pure lui.
I accept the instruction.
Ride pure lui.
Now, and Mr. Depp, as the client in your relationship, is in the position to make the final decision regardless of your advice. Would you agree?
Gli hanno chiesto due
I would
volte.
instruct the witness
No.
not to answer that question. I don't know that I know he can't answer that question without disclosing communications with Mr. Depp. So I instruct the witness not to answer.
I accept the instruction.
Mr. Waldman, if you were advising a client in an attorney-client relationship, and you were in settlement negotiations, would it be you or the client who has the ultimate decision-making ability?
Ma di cosa stiamo
But to
parlando?
speculate about the question, yes, generally the client would be responsible for deciding, the ultimate outcome of a settlement. Yes.
Now, you met Mr. Depp after he and Amber Heard had split up. Is that correct?
That's
Sono
correct.
You met
esterrefatto.
Mr. Depp after he and Amber Heard had reached a settlement in their divorce. Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
So you have no personal knowledge of anything that went on during their marriage. Is that fair to say?
Well, it depends what you mean by personal knowledge. I wasn't there, if that's what you mean. Correct.
You never witnessed any interaction between Mr. Depp and Amber Heard.
Gli ha appena chiesto se ha mai visto di persona qualcosa tra Amber Heard e Johnny. Perché lei l'ha
And you
visto.
have no personal
Ma perché lei l'ha
knowledge
visto?
of the conduct by either of them against the other prior to October 2016. Is that correct?
Ma perché tu l'hai mai visto? Che parli?
Again, if you're asking me, do I have any knowledge of their conduct? I think I have knowledge of their conduct. I think maybe you're asking me, did I witness conduct?
I'm asking personal knowledge, which would mean you would have had to have witnessed it.
If you're asking whether I've witnessed it, the answer is no.
Ma per forza, ma perché tu l'hai visto?
Now, your initial knowledge of the relationship between Mr. Depp
Sono
and Ms. Heard was
allibito.
based on your interviews with Mr. Depp. Would that be fair to say?
I would instruct the witness not
Di non
to answer
rispondere.
that question because he can't even answer yes or no without disclosing the substance of communications with his client, Mr. Depp.
Ovvio,
I accept the instruction.
ovvio.
Once you came into Mr. Depp's life and became his counsel, Mr. Depp filed with your assistance a number of lawsuits. Would you agree?
E quindi?
Yes.
Did Mr. Depp terminate Tracy Jacobs as his agent before or after you became Mr. Depp's counsel?
Mr. Waldman, I would instruct you not to answer that
Per
question.
forza non può dire se gliel'ha consigliato
Doing so
lui, ma stiamo
required you
scherzando.
To disclose any communications you had with Mr. Depp.
It would.
Per forza!
How long had Tracy Jacobs been Mr. Depp's agent at the time Mr. Depp terminated Tracy Jacobs?
And again, Adam's
Di nuovo.
instruction, to the extent that that answering the question requires you to disclose communications that you had with Mr. Depp, I would instruct you not to answer the question.
Ma non mi dire.
It would.
Was it Mr. Depp's decision to terminate Tracy Jacobs?
Again, I would instruct
nuovo,
you not to
stesso
answer that question
discorso.
because that could only have come from Mr. Depp in the communication with you.
I accept the instruction.
Ma per forza.
After you began representing Mr. Depp, Mr. Depp filed a lawsuit against Joel Mandel, Mr. Depp's former business manager, correct?
Ok, sei stato tu? Ma di nuovo, non può dirlo.
That's correct.
And you represented Mr. Depp in that lawsuit against
Vero?
Joel
Fin qui
Mandel.
puoi dire quello che vuoi. Sì, sono stato io.
I did.
But it was
Ok.
Mr. Depp's decision on whether to file the lawsuit against Mr. Mandel.
Non posso dirlo.
Would you agree?
I would instruct the witness not to answer that question because it would require disclosure of communications between Mr. Depp and Mr. Waldman as to who was advising who as to filing
I
the
would
case
instruct.
against TMG and the Mandel brothers. So I would instruct you not to answer that.
Ma per forza, ma di cosa parliamo?
I accept the instruction.
Did Mr. Depp have the ultimate decision making ability with respect to the lawsuit against Mr. Mandel and his company?
And again, I would instruct
C'è
you
sto
not to
discorso.
answer to
Ma non
the
può
extent
dire,
it
ma che
requires you
cazzo
to
vuole,
disclose
cosa vuole
attorney,
fare?
client communication.
It would.
Ma per forza.
After you began representing Mr. Depp,
Dopo che inizia a rappresentare
filed
Mr.
a lawsuit
Depp,
against Jake Bloom.
ha fatto Mr. Depp ha fatto una causa contro Jake Bloom.
Correct?
Giusto? Sì.
That's correct.
And you represented Mr. Depp
L'hai
in that
rappresentato,
lawsuit
giusto?
against Jake Bloom and his law firm,
Sì.
did you not?
I did.
But it was Mr. Depp's decision on whether to file
Ma è
a
stato lui a
lawsuit
decidere
against
di
Mr.
fare
Bloom
la
and his
causa
law
o sei
firm,
stato
is that
tu?
correct?
Non
Again, I
posso
would
dire.
instruct the witness not to answer to the extent it requires him to disclose attorney-client communications.
It would.
Ma certo che lo farebbe.
And Mr. Depp, though, was the ultimate decision maker in connection with any decisions made.
Di nuovo,
in
stesso
the
discorso.
litigation against Mr. Bloom
Come
and
può
his law firm.
dirtelo
Do you
se è
agree?
stato lui a fare la
Same
scelta?
instruction
Ma
not to
se mi
answer.
ma
It's
per
basically the
forza!
same question gussied up a bit. So same instruction not to answer.
I accept the instruction.
After you began representing Mr. Depp filed a lawsuit against the Sun newspaper and its editor.
Quanto ancora deve andare avanti?
Correct?
Scusatemi.
Correct.
For purposes of this deposition, I may.
L'hai
refer to the
rappresentato?
lawsuit against the Sun and its editor Dan Wooten as the UK lawsuit or the UK litigation. Will you understand those references to mean this?
I will.
What was your role in the UK litigation?
I would instruct the witness not to answer that
Per
question
forza!
because it necessarily requires him or would require him to disclose his communications with his client, Johnny Depp.
It would.
Per forza! It
You
would.
represented Mr. Depp throughout the UK litigation, correct?
Again, I would.
And Mr. Depp alleged in the UK litigation that the Sun and Dan Wooten had committed libel by accusing Mr. Depp of being a, quote, wife beater, end of quote, and committing domestic violence against Amber Heard, correct?
Ok, qua deve solo dire. Sì, ok, sì.
It was
E
Mr.
allora?
Depp's decision on whether to bring the UK lawsuit against the Sun and Dan Wooten, correct?
And
Non
again,
può
I would
dirlo.
instruct the witness not to answer I would instruct him not to answer because it perforce would require him to disclose attorney-client communications as to the thought process that went into filing that particular lawsuit.
I accept the instruction.
Ma non mi
After
dire.
you began representing Mr. Depp filed suit against Amber Heard, his former wife, correct?
That's correct.
And you represented Mr. Depp
E tu l'hai
in
rappresentato?
the lawsuit against Amber Heard from March 1, 2019 up until October of 2020, is that correct?
Giusto? L'hai rappresentato
Yes.
tu? Sì? Ok.
And it was Mr. Depp's decision on
Ed è
whether
stato
to
lui a
file
volerlo
the
fare?
lawsuit against
Non
Amber
può
Heard.
dirtelo!
Would instruct the witness not to answer that question based on attorney-client privilege.
I accept the instruction.
Si è tolto gli
Depp
occhiali
is
questo.
alleging in this lawsuit that Amber Heard defamed him by suggesting that he had committed domestic abuse against her, correct?
Yes.
As part of your representation of Mr. Depp, you contacted potential witnesses, is that correct?
Again,
Non può dirlo.
That is attorney work product, and that is
Ma
protected
sono
in
esterrefatto.
Virginia. So I would object on that basis, but you can answer that question yes or no.
Yes.
Se
You
vuoi.
also spoke with the press on Mr. Depp's behalf, did you not?
And I would instruct the witness not to answer to the extent that it requires disclosure of any communications between
Di
yourself
cosa
and Mr. Depp.
stiamo parlando?
It would.
Certo che lo farebbe.
And therefore,
I accept the instruction.
Ma per
how
forza.
frequently did you communicate with the press on Mr. Depp's behalf?
I would
Non può
instruct the
dirlo,
witness
ma...
not to answer that question
No, ma è
because,
scema, è deficiente.
possible to do so without disclosing
È
attorney-client
deficiente.
I accept the instruction.
Why did you communicate with the press?
Same
Ma
instruction
di
not to
nuovo?
answer on the same grounds.
I accept the instruction.
What were you hoping to gain?
Cosa
Same
pensavi?
instruction not to answer the question.
Non ci credo. Non ci credo.
You remain Mr. Depp's primary counsel for all of his affairs, isn't that correct?
I'm
Questo...
going to instruct the witness not to answer that because I don't think you can answer that without disclosing your communications with Mr. Depp, and we have to be consistent.
That's true, and I accept the instruction.
Mr. Waldman, I'm going to ask you to take
Ma è Dormammu veramente?
exhibit number 3.
È veramente
Did
Dormammu.
there come a time in 2018 that you contacted Rolling Stone about writing an article about Mr. Depp?
And to the
Stessa
extent
cosa.
that you cannot answer it without disclosing communications with Mr. Depp, I would instruct you not to answer.
Non mi dire.
I think it would implicate discussions with Mr. Depp, so I accept your instruction.
The author of this article, which was published on June 21, 2018, is Stephen Roderick. Were you present when Mr. Roderick interviewed Mr. Depp?
Se
You may
adesso
answer
gli...
that question yes or no.
Puoi dire sì o no?
It's not yes or no. I was there for some of it.
Okay. Was the Rolling Stone interview before or after Mr. Depp filed suit against the Sun and Dan Wooten?
I'm not sure.
Do you recall whether the publication of this Rolling Stone article was before or after Mr. Depp filed the lawsuit against the Sun and Dan Wooten?
I don't.
I'm going to ask you to take a look at page 10. And it says on page 10, it was Adam Waldman who first contacted Rolling Stone about writing a story about the injustice
Lui sta ridendo.
injustice being done to Depp's reputation and bottom line. You see that? Well, before you go there, Mr. Waldman, I asked you a question. I just read that and said, do you see that? With that, can you answer that question?
I thought I answered yes, but yes, ma'am.
Okay. thank
Lo
you very
vedo.
much.
Lo vedo.
Is that an accurate statement?
Quindi?
No.
What is inaccurate about it?
It says it was Adam Waldman who first contacted Rolling Stone. That's incorrect.
What is correct?
What is correct is that I was not the first to contact Rolling Stone.
Who first contacted Rolling Stone?
Non posso dirlo. Ah, ok, puoi dirlo.
I'm going to ask the question, notwithstanding, why did Mr. Depp contact Rolling Stone?
I would instruct you not to answer that question.
Non mi dire, non mi
I
dire.
accept the instruction.
Did Mr. Depp authorize you to have communications with the Rolling
La
Stone?
faccia di
to set up this
Rottenborn.
interview?
Instruct you not to answer that question on the
La
grounds
faccia
of
di
attorney-client
Rottenborn.
privilege.
I accept the instruction.
Did you assist Mr. Depp with publicity on Mr. Depp's behalf?
I would instruct you not to answer on the grounds of attorney-client communications.
Io non ci
I
credo.
accept the instruction.
Io non ci credo.
In your view, does assisting Mr. Depp with publicity constitute legal work?
The witness has already testified he had one engagement for Mr. Depp, and that was a legal engagement. So I'm going to instruct him not to answer any questions about his communications with Mr. Depp.
I accept the instruction.
Ma grazie
In
cazzo.
participating in the interview with the Rolling Stones, were you speaking on Mr. Depp's behalf?
And I'm going to instruct not to
di nuovo.
answer because, again, I don't think you can answer that question without disclosing your communications with Mr. Depp about authority. So I'm instructing you not to answer the question.
It was Mr. Depp's choice whether you said anything to the press relating to Mr. Depp. Would you agree?
I instruct the witness not to answer.
Mr. Waldman, you reached out to a number of other publications to speak on Mr. Depp's behalf. Do you recall?
Again, I would instruct not to answer to the extent it requires you to disclose communications that you had with Mr. Depp.
It would, and I accept the instruction.
How many publications did you communicate with on behalf of Mr. Depp?
Same instruction not to answer based on attorney-client privilege and attorney work product.
Ma siamo seri?
I accept the instruction.
How many publications did you reach out to on Mr. Depp's behalf relating to the UK litigation?
Same instruction not to answer on the same grounds.
I accept the instruction.
How many publications did you reach out to on Mr. Depp's behalf relating to this litigation?
Same instruction on the same grounds.
I accept the instruction.
How many publications did you reach out to concerning allegations that Mr. Depp had abused Amber Heard?
Same instruction, same grounds.
Lo lasciamo andare a casa questo signore? Lo può andare a casa?
You had a Twitter account, did you not?
I did.
Hai un account di Twitter?
That Twitter account.
Urca!
I'm not sure of the date.
Approximately when?
I'm not even sure of the year.
Is it prior to 2005, 2010, 2015?
Do you want me to speculate?
I want you to give me your best estimate.
Okay. I'm really not sure.
Vuole che io
I couldn't
speculi?
put a specific date on it.
Do you
If you
recall?
want to give me ranges, I could try.
Do you recall how many years you had the Twitter account?
Not precisely, no.
Ma lei con che fa? Cioè, ma lei si rende conto della figura di merda che sta facendo? Cioè, come cazzo?
Was it more than 3 years?
I don't think so.
Ma lei,
Now,
cioè, ha una minima. No.
You had your Twitter account suspended, correct?
Yes, that's true. My Twitter account was suspended.
Do you recall when that was?
Not with specificity, no.
Do you recall why?
Well, I wrote several letters to Twitter to ask why I was suspended for
Ma non mi hanno
life
risposto.
from their platform. And the response that I received was multiple violations of their policy. So I asked, could they name one example of those multiple violations? And they responded by saying now they were appealing, without my asking them to do so, my suspension. And that's when they sent me another note that I was suspended for life.
Più o meno come la mia homepage.
So just so the record's clear, so you have been suspended for life by Twitter?
Sì.
Yes.
Okay. Do you
E
have
quindi?
a Twitter account now?
No.
Do you still communicate with the press relating to Mr. Depp?
And I would instruct the witness not to answer the question to the extent that it requires you to disclose communications between you and Johnny.
It would, so I accept the instruction.
Do you still communicate with the press on Mr. Depp's behalf?
Same instruction, same grounds.
I accept the instruction.
Has Mr. Depp ever asked you not to speak to the press?
Same instruction, same grounds. That clear on its face, it would require Mr. Waldman to disclose his communications with Mr. Depp, which he will not do.
It would, and I accept the instruction.
Would you have followed Mr. Depp's direction if he had asked you not to speak to the press?
I will instruct the witness not to answer because it's an end around the attorney-client privilege. Clever, but I'm going to instruct the witness not to answer.
I accept the instruction.
Has Mr. Depp ever asked you not to speak to the press about issues involving he and Amber Heard?
We'd instruct the witness not to answer the question on attorney-client privilege.
I accept the instruction.
Would you have followed Mr. Depp's direction if he had asked you not to speak with the press about issues involving he and Amber Heard?
And I will instruct not to answer on the grounds of attorney-client privilege.
I accept the instruction.
Has Mr. Depp ever asked you to correct or retract any statements you made to the press relating to Mr. Depp or Mr. Heard or Amber Heard?
Would instruct the witness not to answer on the grounds of attorney-client privilege.
I accept the instruction.
Am I doing a cacco figura by showing to the court this deposition? Yes? Is that correct? Yes. Thank you very much.
Same instruction, same grounds.
And I accept.
Io accetto. E io accetto. Lui risponde dicendo e io accetto.
The press to correct or retract any statements you have made to the press relating to Mr. Depp or Amber Heard.
I want to make sure I understand the instruction. Are you saying you instruct not to answer in the event it implicates privileged conversations with Mr. Depp?
Yeah, I think I'm going to instruct not to answer.
Mr. I'm going to ask you to take a look at what has been marked as I think I'm going to try to blow it up.
Memato.
It looks kind of hard to read.
Nella pagina nera ci sono un cazzo di link.
And it's an article from July 3, 2020.
Mega Pint, baby.
Mail Online. This is Daily Mail Online. Do you see that?
Lo vedo.
I do.
Fin qui posso rispondere?
No, actually, if I'm just going to go to page 8.
Cioè,
I'm going to ask you to take a look.
Lo vedi questa testimonianza? L'hai vista? Perfetto, non dobbiamo parlare di questo, dobbiamo parlare di un'altra cosa.
Quote, Amber Heard and her friends in the media used fake sexual violence allegations as both a sword and a shield.
Ah, ma è lui!
They have selected some of her sexual violence.
Vi faccio ridere, vi voglio far ridere di più, perché non avete capito perché lo stanno chiamando. Voi non sapete perché stanno chiamando quest'uomo. Volete saperlo? Volete saperlo? La controcausa che Amber Heard sta facendo a Johnny Depp in questo momento per $100 milioni è per una frase che ha detto lui. Quindi questa è la testimonianza che dimostra che Amber Heard ha diritto a chiedere $100 milioni di danni. Chapeau! Parla pa! Pofferbacco alla faccia del bicarbonato di sodio! Andate!
Quote facts, end of quote, as the sword, inflicting them on the public and Mr. Depp. Do you see that?
Complimenti!
I do.
Did you make that statement?
I believe I did.
Did you make that statement on behalf of Mr. Depp?
Non posso dirlo.
Instruct the witness not to answer that question on attorney-client privilege grounds.
I accept the instruction.
Why did you...
No, mi si sono spente le cuffie. Wait! Non esiste. Metto le...
Were you representing Mr. Depp at the time you made this statement?
And in any event, I'm going to instruct the witness not to answer that question on attorney-client privilege.
Era l'audio di...
I apologize. I actually didn't hear the question. I can agree with the instruction, but I probably should hear the question.
Fair enough.
Non ho sentito la domanda. Penso che lei abbia ragione, ma non ho sentito la domanda. Ah, ok, va via l'audio.
You made this statement?
Fair enough.
We would instruct the witness not to answer on attorney-client privilege grounds.
Thank you. I accept the instruction. Sorry for the...
Grazie.
Did you discuss this statement with Mr. Depp before making the statement?
Non posso dirlo.
Yeah, I accept the instruction.
Did you discuss the statement with Mr. Depp after making the statement?
Non posso
Same
dirlo.
instruction, same grounds.
I accept the instruction.
Was Mr. Depp aware
Non posso
either
dirlo.
before or after that you were making this statement?
Same instruction, same grounds.
I accept the instruction.
Did you make this statement with Mr. Depp's authorization?
Non
or
posso
agreement?
dirlo.
Same instruction, same grounds.
I accept the instruction.
Was Mr. Depp aware
Non posso
that you
dirlo.
were speaking with the press?
Same instruction, same grounds.
I accept the instruction.
Did Mr. Depp ever ask you to retract or correct?
Non posso dirlo.
Same instruction, same grounds.
Tutte le volte che dice Mr. Depp, non può dirlo.
If Mr. Depp had asked you to
Non può
retract or
dirlo.
correct this statement, would you have retracted or corrected it?
Same instruction,
Same ground.
I accept the instruction.
If Mr. Depp had told
Same
you that the
instruction, same
statement
ground.
was not correct, would you have corrected or retracted it?
Same instruction, same grounds.
I accept the instruction.
Did you rely upon any statements or evidence from Mr. Depp
No.
in making this statement?
Same instruction, same grounds.
Yes, I accept the instruction.
And if you could bring up exhibit number 5. Mr. Waldman, I'm going to be asking you a question about a specific statement in this one. If you would like to read the article first, you are certainly at liberty to, and you could take control now and do that.
Thank you, I will.
It says, and this is, I guess, I didn't set the stage here.
Ma poi
This
che
is
siti sono?
the Daily Mail published on July 3rd, 2020. And I'm going to now direct your attention to page 9. Depp's lawyer, Adam Waldman,
Adam Waldman ha
various
detto,
discrepancies prove that nothing heard and her friends said about the events of May 21, 2016 could be considered.
a parte che ha dichiarato il vero,
Hearsay.
hearsay.
Then I'm going to direct your attention, Mr. Waldman, to the next statement. Quote, quite simply, this was an ambush, a hoax. They set Mr. Depp up by calling the cops, but the first attempt didn't do the trick. The officers came to the penthouses, thoroughly searched and interviewed, and left after seeing no damage to face or property.
Ok, e questo
So
l'abbiamo
Amber and
addirittura
her friends
visto.
Spilled a little wine and roughed the place up, got their story straight under the direction of a lawyer and a publicist, and then placed a second call to
E lo sappiamo che è vero
statement?
questo.
I do.
Did you make those statements?
There are two parts to what you've shown me. The first part didn't have quotation marks around it.
And I'm not asking about that. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
where it said nothing could be considered credible, that's not quoting me. The part
Right.
with the quote marks, I believe I said that, yes.
So starting from quite simply through (911), you stated all that. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
E quindi?
Did you make these statements on Mr. Depp's behalf?
Non ci credo.
Instruct the
Ma è
witness
scema.
not to answer on the grounds of attorney-client.
È deficiente.
I accept the instruction.
Why did you make these statements?
Same instruction, same reason.
È deficiente.
I accept the instruction.
What were you trying to convey to the press in making these statements?
Same instruction, same reason.
Ma io non ci
I
credo.
accept the instruction.
Did you discuss this statement with Mr. Depp before making these statements?
Non può, ma come
Same
cazzo fa a
instruction,
dirtelo?
Same reason.
I accept the instruction.
Did you discuss these statements with Mr. Depp following making these statements?
Same instruction, same rationale.
Yes, I accept the instruction.
Was Mr. Depp aware either before or after that you were making these statements?
Same instruction, same reason.
I accept the instruction.
Did you make these statements with Mr. Depp's authorization or agreement?
Ci sta, ma che figura di merda sta facendo?
I accept the instruction.
Was Mr. Depp aware you were speaking?
Poi
with the
l'intervistato è
press?
un avvocato, non è un
Same
coglione.
basis.
I accept the instruction.
Did Mr. Depp ever ask you to retract or correct these statements?
Same instruction, same basis.
I accept the instruction.
If Mr. Depp had asked you to retract or correct these statements, would you have retracted or corrected them?
Stesso
Same
discorso.
instruction, same basis.
I accept the instruction.
Un avvocato in carica.
If Mr. Depp had told you these statements were not correct, would you have corrected or retracted them?
Same instruction, same basis.
I accept the instruction.
Did you rely upon any statements or evidence from Mr. Depp in making these statements?
Same instruction, same basis.
I accept the instruction.
Ma per confondere la giuria, ma che figura stanno
I'm going to
facendo?
ask you to take a look at exhibit number 6. This was another Daily
Se adesso
Mail
inizia...
online, July 3, 2020. And if you would like to...
Ma quando tu da avvocatessa ti alzi in piedi e dici vostro onore, la prossima testimonianza sono io che faccio le domande e poi Rottenborg, ma non ti vergogni? Ma non ti vergogni? Cioè, ma cosa stiamo... Cioè, buongiorno signor Waldman, lei che lavoro fa? Ah, è l'avvocato di Johnny Depp? Capisco. È in servizio in questo momento o lo è stato in passato? Ah, in servizio in questo momento? Grazie, arrivederci. Cioè, ma che cazzo vuoi
Go
dire?
ahead and read the article. This would be a good time to do it.
Thank you.
Mr. Waldman, we were looking at Waldman exhibit number 6, and it's the Daily Mail from July.
Sai cosa stanno facendo, King, questi? Stanno facendo sta farsa giusto per dire noi l'abbiamo fatto e pararsi il culo da Amber, te lo dico io.
Going to scroll through it, and I think we had some technical difficulties, so we took a break. Have you had an opportunity to review it, or do you need to now?
No, Ms. Bredoff, I just saw the screen for the first time, so may I read it now?
Absolutely. I'm going to ask you to turn to what is the 11th page, the last page you just finished reading, and I'm going to direct your attention to some specific words that are attributed to you. Do you see that it says Depp's attorney Adam Waldman said? Right here? Okay. You see Depp's attorney Adam Waldman said. Do you see that there, Mr. Waldman?
I do.
Okay. And then I'm going to direct your attention to specifically
Emulare messaggi subliminali, ma in che senso, King?
Abuse hoax against Johnny Depp. Do you see that?
I do.
Did you speak the words, quote, the end of Ms. Heard's abuse hoax against Johnny Depp?
I'm not sure. It appears as I look at this that there are quote marks around.
Ma poi lui guadagna 20 milioni all'anno e gliene ha chiesti 50 per la carriera rovinata, lei gliene chiede 100 per cosa? Che la pagano 4 spicci.
Do you have any reason to believe that you did not say the end of Ms. Heard's abuse hoax?
Scusa King, ma in che modo è influenzabile
No,
la giuria da
no
una roba del
no
genere?
reason to doubt that.
Luca, non me lo ricorderò mai.
Were you representing Mr. Depp at the time you made this statement? I'm going to refer to it as a statement. I'm taking specific words.
Vogliono far credere che non rispondendo nascondono qualcosa, ma è il suo avvocato.
Mr. Depp at the time you made the statement that included Ms. Heard's.
Cioè non si appella al quinto emendamento, è un avvocato.
Answer based on attorney-client privilege.
I accept the instruction.
Se questo parla gli tolgono la licenza.
Same instruction, same basis.
I accept the instruction.
What were you trying to convey to the press in making this statement?
Same instruction, same basis.
I accept the instruction.
Did you make the statement on Mr. Depp's behalf?
Same instruction, same basis.
I accept the instruction.
Did you discuss this statement with Mr. Depp before making the statement?
Same instruction, same basis.
I accept the instruction.
Did you discuss this statement with Mr. Depp following making the statement?
Same instruction, same basis.
I accept the instruction.
Was Mr. Depp aware either before or after that you were making this statement?
Same instruction, same basis.
I accept the instruction.
Did you make this statement with Mr. Depp's authorization or agreement?
Same instruction, same basis.
I accept the instruction.
Was Mr. Depp aware you were speaking with the press?
Same instruction, same basis.
I accept the instruction.
Did Mr. Depp ever ask you to retract or correct this statement?
Sì, ma long shot, King.
I accept the instruction.
Super long
If Mr.
shot.
Depp had asked you to retract or correct this statement, would you have done so?
Same instruction, same basis.
Cioè, tu mi stai dicendo che vogliono insinuare il dubbio?
Mr. Waldman, I'm going to ask you to take a look at what has been marked as deposition exhibit number 11, and if you want to take...
Cioè, questa cosa la fanno per insinuare il dubbio.
Mr. Waldman, I'm just going to ask you, it's just kind of 2.5 pages. Go ahead and take the moment to review it, and then I'll ask
Se perde Johnny Depp, veramente, parto e vado su Marte.
Okay, thank you. I've read it.
Okay. So directing your attention to exhibit number 11. So, because there's a number of these, so maybe we can just clear it up right from the start. So we have conversation. If you look at the top, conversation, 6 messages, 3 parties, over 209 minutes. And it has this first one, it has a date and a time, and it has a telephone number. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay. And then it has some email messages, or text messages. It looks like it starts with
Arrivo ai chat.
Keith Bishop. Do you know who Keith Bishop is?
I do.
Kate Bishop è la ragazza degli occhi di
Keith
falco.
Bishop is a publicist who lives in London.
And for what publication?
Oh no, he's a publicist. He's an advisor on media.
I see. Did you, at any time, did you or Mr. Depp ever employ Keith Bishop in any kind of public relations role?
Mr. Waldman, I would instruct you not to answer the question to the extent that it would require you to disclose any communications you had with Johnny, either receiving or giving.
I would not be able to answer without doing so, so I accept the instruction.
Okay, and then Mr. Bishop says, and this is on 1/28/2020, Adam, I can confirm a meeting with the Mail Online for Monday, 17 February at 10 a.m. You see that?
I do.
So did you in fact have a meeting with the Mail Online on 17 February?
I couldn't say sitting here now definitively that we met on Monday the 17th of February, no. But I see this and it wouldn't surprise me if we had.
And was Mr. Depp with you when you had the meeting?
I believe Mr. Depp was with me when we had this meeting.
And you were representing Mr. Depp at the time, correct?
I would instruct the witness not to answer that question based on attorney-client privilege.
I accept the instruction.
When did you obtain the audio tape that you're referencing in this text message?
And I would instruct you not to answer the question to the extent it would require you to disclose any communications you had with Mr. Depp, your client.
It would, and so I won't be able to answer the question.
What tape did you provide to the Mail Online, the Daily Mail?
In this, are you asking, forgive me, in this instance relating to this text?
Yes.
My recollection is that I gave a pair of audio tapes, actually, to them. Whether that occurred sequentially or at the same time, I don't remember, but I provided them 2 tapes.
What training have you had in domestic violence?
Ora cercano di screditare lui.
None.
Have you ever represented any clients who have either been accused of domestic violence or
Johnny Depp.
or had domestic violence committed on them other than Mr. Depp.
Ah, ok.
No.
And of course, you never saw any, as you would say, element or elements of things that Ms. Heard claimed, right?
I never saw any element or elements of things she claimed. Do you mean, did I ever see evidence with my own eyes that something she was saying was false?
Yes.
Yes, to some extent I have seen evidence of things that show her statements to be false.
Before we get there, as best you can recall today, who are the eyewitnesses that you...
Ma è scemo. Ok, King, cosa voleva influenzare adesso?
So that you referred to in the text to Christian Carino, that you...
Cosa voleva influenzare adesso?
Ms. Heard's claims of abuse by Johnny Depp.
Gli ha chiesto letteralmente, lei non ha mai visto con i suoi occhi, non ha mai avuto modo di testimoniare visivamente al fatto che le accuse della mia cliente Amber fossero false, non è vero? No, veramente, no, l'ho visto con i miei occhi che alcune accuse erano false. Gli ha chiesto letteralmente, lei non ha avuto modo di testimoniare che la mia cliente sta dicendo cazzate, vero? No, sì, veramente l'ho visto. Cosa cazzo vuole fare?
Okay, good. It's also probably easier to answer by taking a particular incident rather than just thinking of names of people. So maybe this is a good illustration that is a helpful answer. On May 21st, 2016, and I always view this as one of her central claims. It was the one she put on the cover of People magazine. It's the one she led with when she went to get her temporary restraining order.
Ok, la foto del People magazine.
On May 21st, 2016, that's her claim, and that she was beaten.
Questa è la foto del cellulare in faccia.
Mr. Depp in the face, and her hair was pulled. And she showed up on the 27th in court with a lot of bruises on her face. So there are 2 police officers, one domestic violence trained female police officer, who've testified over and over and over that there was no damage to the penthouse, which Ms. Heard claimed was destroyed. That's a direct.
E abbiamo la testimonianza che lo dice.
There are, I can think of, 9 other witnesses, the majority of whom are either neutral or actually, well, Ms. Heard's own witnesses, who have testified in various forums, various times, that there were no injuries to her face whatsoever between the 21st and the 27th, when suddenly there were bruises.
Who are those 9?
Let's see.
Scusa, ma questi stanno portando una testimonianza di un avvocato che praticamente che ha lavorato per un altro caso per cui sa tutto per filo e per segno e gli sta smontando il caso? Cioè gli sta smontando il caso in una testimonianza che stanno portando loro, ok? 200 euro, credo.
Melanie Inglesi, Amber's own primary makeup artist. Laura Divinier was Ms. Heard's assistant and decorator, and now works for Elon Musk. Hilda Vargas, Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard's at the time housekeeper.
Tutti i testimoni che sono già passati per Depp.
McMillan, who was Ms. Heard and Mr. Depp's stylist, a good friend of Ms. Heard. Isaac Baruch, Ms. Heard's and Mr. Depp's friend, close friend, and Ms.
Che
Heard's.
è quello che ha visto Amber far finta di darsi i pugni.
So continuing on, the witnesses, a list of some witnesses to the 21st, her claims of violence and damage to the apartment. Trinity Esparza, who was the head of the concierge desk at the Eastern Columbia building, and a friend of Ms. Heard's also. Cornelius Harrell, who I think also worked for the concierge desk, or in any event worked for the Eastern Columbia building, and met with Ms. Heard on the 22nd of May, which meeting was captured on CCTV also. Alejandro Romero, who I believe is head of security at the Eastern Columbia building, and I think Brandon Patterson also testified about the absence of bruises. And I should even distinguish, because we're talking about the notion of a hoax, I should distinguish these people specifically have given testimony that Ms. Heard was uninjured between the 21st of May up into perhaps the 25th or 26th of May.
Non è neanche il controinterrogatorio, ragazzi, sono le domande della difesa queste,
That even after the 27th, they
Grazie Ciccio. Non è neanche il controinterrogatorio.
But during that period between the 21st and the 27th, I'm not sure if I've listed 9 plus the 2 police officers, but I think that's an illustration of what I was referring to.
No, that's a lot of damage!
You asked me about.
Can you please pull up a document labeled ARW 660, please? Sorry, but you do believe that the pictures and videos
Hanno fatto già.
sent you help disprove Ms. Heard's allegations, correct?
As to that incident, Thanksgiving, perhaps 2013, I think those videos and photographs, yes, demolished her claim.
Have you communicated with other social media users about this case other than public messaging platforms? Let me ask that differently. Have you communicated privately with other social media users about this case?
Other social media, I want to make sure I'm precise. Other social media users?
Yes.
That group would include almost everybody on Earth.
Have you provided information about this case to other social media personalities who then post that information?
I've provided information episodically to what I would call internet journalists, and I'll define that as journalists who are not affiliated with, you mentioned, I think, NBC a moment ago, or a mainstream media outlet.
Have you communicated with a social media user who goes by the name That Umbrella Guy?
I've had several phone calls with a person who goes by the name That Umbrella Guy. I don't actually know his real name.
Have you communicated with him other than through phone calls?
Quanti spettatori ha adesso questa live?
I don't remember doing
570.000. GG That Umbrella Guy per aver appena superato PewDiePie nelle iscrizioni.
Have you communicated in a similar fashion with someone on social media who goes by the name That Brian Fella?
Yes.
What about someone who goes by the name The Real Laura B?
Yes.
And have you communicated to those individuals listed evidence that you believe suggests that Ms. Heard's allegations are hoaxes?
I would say I communicate with the internet journalists, because we put them in a category calling them that. I've done that. Exactly the same way I would communicate with mainstream media. If they have questions about evidence or the facts, I'll inform them.
And have you, when you communicate with them, do you do so? You testified some by phone, correct?
Yes.
Do you do so by text or messenger platform?
Largely, I think by phone, but if I communicated in writing, it would be probably by signal.
Can you please pull up the exhibits ALH 17001 to 2, please?
Right on the screen, Exhibit 24.
No, my first question is that in that box where it says first on the record statement from me regarding the body cam to RTL, Adam Waldman, Johnny Depp's attorney, is that a statement that you made to a German media outlet called RTL?
Yes.
And in that statement, you say that LAPD have now opened up a criminal investigation into perjury of Ms. Heard, correct?
Yes.
Did you make a correction to RTL when you learned that the LAPD wasn't in fact investigating Ms. Heard for perjury?
Well, the way you've characterized it is not exactly what I would agree with. The LAPD told me that they were investigating the perjury claim at that time. Then sequentially came the statement. Then came notification from the LAPD that it was actually the LA Sheriff's Department that was investigating it, and that was the last I heard about it.
And who notified you from the LAPD that it was allegedly the Sheriff's Department who was investigating it?
The same desk officer at Foothill. And when I say he's the desk officer, I don't know if that's not necessarily the job title.
How did you find his, do you have his contact information?
I don't think I do. I don't know, but I don't.
Cosa stanno cercando di dire
sure.
questi?
And I'm sorry if I asked you this. How did you come into contact with this desk officer?
I brought a binder of information.
Ma lei sta piangendo?
Including the statements that had been made.
No, è felice.
And the evidence showing that those statements were false.
In your view. So you took a binder to the LAPD and spoke to this desk officer?
Correct.
And was that the only time that you spoke to this person?
The 2 times.
Were they both in person?
Oh, maybe it's 2 or 3 times. No. No, 2 times we're on the phone.
Was the first meeting in person when you brought this binder?
No, the first was on the telephone.
So the investigation was opened up at your request after you brought this binder to the desk officer? Is that right?
I didn't ask him to open an investigation. I filed a claim with the LAPD.
Quindi semplicemente lui l'ha denunciata.
Regarding these perjurious statements.
Quindi la sua colpa è quella di aver portato un raccoglitore di prove che andavano contro quello che è stato detto alla polizia di Los Angeles contro Johnny Depp, che smentivano le accuse, per cui l'ha denunciata. La sua colpa è questa, ok?
That Ms. Heard and her best friend Rocky Pennington had made to a court.
Was that claim that you filed in writing?
Yes.
Do you know whether that claim was produced as part of your document production in this case? Because I certainly haven't seen it.
I don't know that I ever received a copy of it. It was filed in writing with the LAPD. But I don't recall that I ever received a copy of it.
Did you draft it?
No.
So you were talking to the desk officer and he was taking down notes, and is that the writing you're referring to?
Yes.
Did you ever see this alleged written claim?
Yes.
Did you sign it?
I don't recall if I did.
Did you ever speak to anyone other than your client about this alleged perjury investigation, other than your client and the desk officer?
Well, I think this quote that you've shown me to the media would constitute speaking about it.
Did you ever hear anything more about this perjury investigation, to the extent it existed, from anyone any other third party who claimed that they had spoken to anyone in LAPD or the LA Sheriff's Office?
No, I don't think so.
Mr. Waldman, do you have a professional license?
I do.
Do you have your own law firm?
I do.
What is the name of your law firm?
Endeavor Law Firm.
When was Endeavor Law Firm formed?
I think it was in 2005.
And who was it who formed your law firm?
It was I who did it.
And who owns your law firm?
Cioè lui è il presidente della sua
What is your
firma, ok?
title at the Endeavor Law Firm?
Managing member, I believe.
And it's none of our business who your clients are, but does the Endeavor Law Firm have other clients other than Mr. Depp?
Yes.
Does Johnny Depp issue you a Form W-2?
I don't think so, no.
Do you receive legal training from Johnny Depp or any of your other clients?
I suppose the practice of law in general is legal training, but if I understand your question correctly, no.
Fair point. Have you ever listed Johnny Depp as your employer on any filings with the IRS?
No.
But you offer legal services to clients, correct?
Yes.
All right, I'll say, do you offer legal services to the general public?
Probably not to the general public, but I offer legal services. I think that's your question.
All right. Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, our next one would be Detective Sandanaga, S-A-N-D-A-N-A-G-A.
C'è un'altra
It's
deposizione.
about 20 minutes.
All right, let's go ahead and have that witness.
Non ci credo.
And go ahead.
We start the questioning.
All right, thank you.
Questa è
What's your
deficiente.
name and business address for the record?
Ma è un deepfake!
Marie Sadanaga, M-A-R-I-E, Sadanaga, S-A-D-A-N-A-G-A. And my business address is 100 West 1st Street, Los Angeles, California.
Sintetico!
What is your current occupation?
I am a detective with the Los Angeles
Io
Police
sono un
Department,
detective
and
per
I'm the
l'LAPD.
department's domestic violence coordinator.
What does it mean to be the domestic violence coordinator for the department?
So I am recognized as the person most knowledgeable in domestic violence. I oversee how our department as a whole responds to domestic violence.
Fa
So I
parte del
don't
programma di
investigate
intelligenza
cases right now
artificiale
myself.
dell'LAPD.
I just make sure
Detroit
that
Become
officers
Human.
and detectives are responding to domestic violence how California State Penal Code wants us to.
And how long have you been with the LAPD?
17 years.
What, if any, policies, procedures, and protocols are in place at the LAPD for domestic violence cases separate from other types?
So once we determine there is domestic violence, we have to determine whether there is a crime. Every time we respond to a domestic violence call, per state law, we need to document whether it's a crime or just an incident, which would be when there is not a crime, but there's still paperwork done. So that is part of the officer's investigation.
Now, I had asked a little earlier about when the victim is reluctant to press charges. If the patrol officers saw property damage or marks on the face of the victim, even if the victim was not cooperating and did not want to press charges, what would the patrol officers' obligations be back in May 2016 on a domestic violence call?
If officers determined that there was domestic violence, even if a victim is reluctant, our policy is they still make that arrest if a suspect is there or take a report.
Quindi ha appena detto: se i poliziotti avessero visto qualcosa, anche se lei non avesse voluto, comunque lo dovevano arrestare.
So, if there are, when the patrol officers arrive at the scene, and this is May 2016, and there are 4 people that are present at the scene, how many of those individuals
E un'incredibile autorete di nuovo di Ambra sentita nei confronti di Giovanni Profondo. Oggi abbiamo visto diverse testimonianze di Traccia Giacobbe, agente di Giovanni Profondo, che l'ha definito la più grande star del mondo, rancorosa nei suoi confronti, non ha mai visto niente, e leggermente di parte poco attendibile. Dopodiché abbiamo visto Giovanni Mandela, business manager di Giovanni Profondo, che dice che spendeva tanto. Alla fine abbiamo visto Adamo Uomo Walter, avvocato di Johnny Depp, in corso d'opera, pertanto non può dire niente per segreto lavorativo, quindi testimonianza assolutamente ridicola. Ha visto che Ambra sentita dichiara il falso, l'ha denunciato alla polizia degli Angeli, e nonostante questo gli avvocati di Ambra sentita hanno continuato a fare insinuazioni che non andavano da nessuna parte. Adesso stiamo vedendo un sintetico nei panni dell'investigatore Sandenaga, che non va da nessuna parte, è un autogol sensazionale. Ci dirigiamo verso quelli che sono i tempi di recupero per Ambra sentita, che ormai non ha più speranze, ha tentato il tutto per tutto, andiamo verso una sconfitta netta.
What has been marked as deposition exhibit number 8. It's dated November 24, 2014.
Riassunto di stamattina.
And it's subject to
Riassunto di stamattina.
supplemental report. And it says the domestic violence supplemental report form 15.40.02 has been revised to provide a more concise picture of the history and needs of the victim for the purpose of investigating the crime of domestic violence. You see that? Yes. What is your understanding of why the LAPD decided that they needed to create a supplemental report form that would give a more concise picture of the history and needs of the victim for the purpose of investigating the crime of domestic violence?
Right. The supplemental includes a lot of questions that are required by California state law. So we included that on it. And the original supplemental was actually created a lot earlier, I believe in 1999. This revision of it added some specific questions to help us look at, kind of to do a risk assessment.
Esattamente,
I'm not sure if
Anna.
the supplemental is attached to this form, but on the supplemental, there's a section where I believe there's like 7 yes or no questions. That is what was added during this revision.
Detective Sadnag, I'm going to show you what has been marked as deposition exhibit number 9. And do you recognize this supplemental report?
Yes.
Is this the supplemental form that was referred to in exhibit number 8?
Si stacca il materiale.
Now, if we look at this, and we start out on the left-hand column, and it has a number of different observations to make of the victim. And it includes shaking, unresponsive, crying, scared, angry, fearful, calm, agitated, nervous, threatening, apologetic, under the influence of alcohol, under the influence of drugs, or other observations. And it says document in narrative. All right, are these typically characteristics of victims of domestic violence?
Yes.
I'm going to turn your direction to the crime scene now. And the same question, there's a number of different items on here, including location, vandalized, ransacked, and personal property damage, furniture disarray, broken. What is your understanding of why these are included on this list?
My understanding is that these are things that are typically at a crime scene or can occur, so things that we want officers to look for and mark when they take the crime report.
And as with the questions I had on the characteristics that are on the list for the victim,
Solo mezzo.
are these items that are also discussed with the police officers in their training to look for in even making the determination whether a crime has taken place?
Yes, they are.
Is there a scenario under which the patrol officers decide that there's no crime, but they see property damage and injury and take photographs?
I mean, every situation is different. I believe one way, if we have a situation like that occurred, then there should be a domestic violence incident report, so there is a place to document your observations and statements from people. And
quindi lei per validare il lavoro dei poliziotti che hanno parlato sta chiedendo a un altro.
The officers determined that it wasn't a crime.
And yes, that's why domestic violence incident reports are reports where there are no crime, and that is why we have them, so we can document and have a history of calls and see, in case there is another call in the future, that there is prior history of any type of domestic call, even if it was not ultimately ruled a crime.
Would that incident report include if there were interviews with witnesses and if there were any photographs or notes taken?
Yes, there is still a narrative that is written where everything, the officer's investigation and observations and any photographs are listed.
And
allora, no, c'era un uomo e una donna e Amber è stata interrogata da una donna. Quello che stanno cercando di dire adesso è che i poliziotti non hanno fatto bene il loro lavoro perché non hanno seguito la procedura. Effettivamente è vero.
Was there an incident report in place in May of 2016 for patrol officers to use in domestic violence calls?
Yes.
Ah no, c'è stato.
Could you please describe the purpose of an incident report as of May 2016?
Quindi c'è stato, ma allora
And what was included?
Ritiro tutto quello che ho appena detto. Ritiro tutto.
So the purpose of domestic violence incident reports were to record when officers responded to a call of domestic violence that did not result in a crime. They are actually required by state law for us to document every domestic violence incident that we respond to. And in that report, it's the same, I keep calling it a face sheet. That's not the official term, but the same as a crime report that we would take it on, but you fill out the information. You just do not list a suspect because we have no crime. It's the victim who
può dire ancora una volta we have no crime?
The other party may cause some type of danger to them, and that other party is then listed as a witness. And then there is a narrative that is included, the same type of narrative that would be in a crime report, where you would write down your source of activity. The officers would put their source of activity and then document their investigation.
We have no crime. Okay.
The statements that anyone made, as we ask on domestic violence calls, what type of relationship it is, how long they've been together, any prior incidents of domestic violence. All that would be included in the narrative of an incident report.
And would any photographs or other notes also be included?
Say it again,
in the incident report?
Yes, they can be, if there was anything that they saw that officers believe needed to be documented in there.
And where would an incident report, and I'm again back in May 2016, where would that be filed or stored once the patrol officers were done with their shift for the day?
The officers would turn in their reports, including any incident reports, to the watch commander, who would read over it and sign it off. And
Ho appena capito. Questa testimonianza è di marzo 2021. I poliziotti sono stati intervistati solamente adesso. Quindi quando hanno fatto questa testimonianza avevano tutt'altra idea, che però si è smentita qualche giorno fa. Quindi semplicemente in disordine cronologico, ma ho appena capito il perché delle domande. È ridicolo che lo facciano vedere adesso, completamente inutile, ma penso che lo facciano vedere per completezza, per dire avete visto tutto. Però semplicemente questa intervista del 2021 si è fatta dire l'avvocatessa qual era la procedura e adesso hanno testimoniato la procedura era esattamente quella. Adesso ho
If it
capito.
is approved, it would go to our records unit at that
Tutti
division to
autogol,
create
Miki.
a report number on it, and then it does get assigned to a detective, just so that we have it on file in case there's any future incidents.
Do officers at some point have to make a determination as to whether domestic violence has occurred?
Yes, they do.
Okay. What criteria do officers use to make that evaluation?
They use the interviews with the parties that are there, what they observe at the scene, even what they observe, like the demeanor of the victims and the suspects. Every situation is different, but it's really like taking in the whole 360 of where you
Anna,
are
grazie.
and what's occurred, so they can get
Qual è il
all
verdetto?
information to
Colpevole
make
lei.
educated determination of
Mi
crimes
sono fatto
occurred.
la sintesi delle testimonianze di
Can you
tutti i
just generally
testimoni
describe
finora,
for me the
non regge
circumstances
quello che
under which
dice
a
lei,
domestic,
ballista.
incident report is used?
A dopo, nessuno.
We take a incident report when we determine there is no crime, but that one of the parties is in fear that either their life was in danger or they could be a victim of some type of serious bodily injury. And so the third incidents you would have, or where we don't take the incident report, is where
A dopo, Ciccio.
both parties state it was an argument, there was no physical injury, both parties say weren't
Non so come
afraid that the
funziona
other was
quello,
going to do any
Zorgo.
type of harm to me.
Okay. And so, in that case, in that third case,
Quando
that you just
finiscono di far
described,
vedere tutto, al più
would there be
tardi il
any
27.
documentation required typically?
On that third one, when we don't have the fear, so it makes it no incident report, it's only documented on that daily field activity report.
Ms. Bauhoff asked a line of questions earlier on in the deposition about victims of domestic violence being reluctant to come forward and speak up. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Is that a significant problem in dealing with domestic violence calls?
Yes.
Is that a problem that you have personally experienced on your own calls?
Non credo, sai Dani.
Yes.
Okay. When confronted with a person who's
Per me no,
unwilling
ragazzi.
to make a statement,
Per me non accetta un cazzo.
is there much that a police officer can really do if you have somebody who just refuses to make a statement and refuses to indicate that they have suffered violent abuse?
It's not too much. Usually we teach them to talk about the cycle of violence and power and control and see if we can, start a rapport with the victim and get them to discuss. But if they really don't want to tell us what happened, we can't force them.
If a potential victim has visible injuries, or that there are indications at the scene that there has been some sort of violent episode, does the fact that the potential victim declines to make a statement mean that the officers can't go forward?
No, not necessarily. they would need to investigate more, but you do have the visible injury and, evidence of some type of struggle. So
Di cosa stiamo parlando ancora?
To get that probable cause to determine that it was a crime that created that injury.
There were a number of questions asked about if observed injury, if observed property damage, back and forth, and both of us have asked you a lot of questions about this. And so I just want to make sure that it's very clear. If a police officer responding to domestic violence call sees injury, regardless of whether the victim cooperates, what is the police officer's obligation? This is as of May 2016.
To do an investigation to determine if that injury was a result of a crime.
And that investigation would include what?
It would include interviewing anyone that is
È l'unico pensiero che ho
seeing
anch'io.
if there's any type of physical evidence of altercation, or depending on the story that was given, if there's corroboration of that, seeing if there's any witnesses. Kind of depends. Each one's different, but just doing a thorough investigation.
If one of the other witnesses took the officers through the entire premises and showed broken glass, spilled wine, and a number of areas of disturbance and vandalism, what would the officers' obligations be then?
The officers would still need to determine if there was enough evidence there from these witness statements and
No,
the
Manu,
things that they're
questa
seeing to
testimonianza è
determine if this
antecedente a
injury
quella
is a
dei
result of a
poliziotti che
crime.
hanno già detto di aver fatto tutto bene.
What discretion do the police officers have when they see an injury on the victim when they reported to a domestic violence call? And this is as of May 2016.
The officers still need to do an investigation if there is a visible injury, because they have to determine if it was a crime.
So one of your roles, if I understand it, is to make a determination of that the police, the LAPD as a whole, how you're overseeing how they respond to domestic violence calls, correct?
Leading.
Yes.
And let me ask it just a little bit differently. In making the determination of whether to create an incident
È staccato
report,
di nuovo, ma porca troia.
what, if any, factors can the officer consider if the victim
Che posso fare, Chat? Non si
does not
attacca.
want to press charges, but the officer still believes that an incident report is appropriate under the circumstances?
It would, if an officer determines that there was not a crime, yet there was enough there, and I guess what I'm trying to say, I mean, the purpose we have to think about, that we tell the officers the purpose of domestic violence incident report is for documentation of incidents, because we know with domestic violence there's usually a series of incidents that happen, and not all of those are crimes. So for us as officers, we document those, so in the future, if there is a crime, we can go back and say there have been all these other incidents. So as officers, we kind of take that into our analysis of the scene, and if we can't determine whether a crime has happened, we have to think about, do we need to document this so maybe sometime in the future people know that this happened?
All right, thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and take our lunch break at this time. Again, do not do any outside research and do not discuss the case with anybody, okay? We'll see you back in an hour.
Quando riniziano 19:45? Hai ragione, potrei provare col Brim. Hai ragione. Dopo lo facciamo. Se non adesso faccio delle stampe off stream. Se non parte, gli facciamo un Brim. Hai ragione tu.
All right, so we'll be back at 1:45. Is your next witness on a deposition or? It's gonna be live, all right, so we'll take care of the TV.
Live!
So 1:45.
Ciao ragazzi. Allora, bene, il riassunto ve l'ho fatto di quello che è successo oggi. Nulla per adesso, si sono fatti degli autogol impressionanti. 1 ora e mezza. Ah no, è 1 minuto al... Ok. Ok. No, non l'ho visto, King. Comunque, quindi nulla di fatto per quanto riguarda oggi. Hanno fatto semplicemente un sacco di autogol. Come ieri, come l'altro ieri. Adesso vi faccio la mia ora di pausa. Ci rivediamo tra un'ora alle 19:45 per riprendere. E poi un paio d'ore di Tarkov questa sera. Al sunto ho fatto lo scemo prima con il microfono dell'Istituto Luce. Probabilmente qualcuno ha clippato e per cui te la becchi la clip. Comunque, sunto rapido, dai. Ha iniziato Bruce Wiccan, che era un ex compagno di band di Johnny Depp. Ha detto che Johnny Depp ha un'ottima memoria. Lui ha visto le ferite, ma sembrava ha visto le ferite su Amber, su un braccio, ma sembrava che l'avesse semplicemente presa. E nulla di fatto. Tracy Jacobs, ex agente di Johnny Depp, che non ha mai visto mai niente, ma era parecchio di parte, molto attendibile. Poi abbiamo visto Joe Mandel, business manager di Johnny Depp, che ha detto che Johnny Depp spendeva tanto. Poi abbiamo visto Adam Waltman, che è un avvocato di Johnny Depp in corso d'opera e non ha potuto dire niente perché c'era il segreto professionale. Quindi niente, gli hanno fatto un sacco di domande a vuoto. Quello che ha potuto dire è che ha visto che Amber Heard dichiarava il falso, ha testimoniato denunciandola all'ufficio di polizia di Los Angeles e ha parlato con degli youtuber. E adesso abbiamo visto Detective Sandenago che ha confermato "We have no crime" e tutto il lavoro fatto dagli altri poliziotti in passato era corretto. E tutti questi testimoni che ti ho appena nominato erano di Amber Heard. Gli autogol sono perché praticamente hanno dato tutti ragione a Johnny. Comunque, 19:45. A dopo. Ciao.